Chapter 401. The Sacred Formation nails the Heavenly God. Qin Wuji took a single step forward. His massive avatar moved with him, its divine eyes partially closed as they pulsed with piercing light. With a mere thought, the avatar pressed its palm downward, descending upon the 8 fire beasts. Under that single hand, the sea of flames was instantly snuffed out. Even the very power of the fire element seemed unable to endure the pressure, fading rapidly into nothingness. A heavy, rolling thunder echoed as the 8 beasts were crushed like mere toys. Their bodies shattered into fragments of light, falling back into the depths of the fiery abyss. The divine avatar, the hallmark of a heavenly god, symbolized an absolute mastery of the great Dao. It was a physical manifestation of law itself. Even a casual strike carried the weight of a supreme technique. In the face of absolute power, everything else was simply swept aside. Despite the aid of the sacred formation, the difference between the void god and heavenly god realms was a chasm that could not be crossed. Qin Wuji looked down at the 8 wounded figures struggling in the abyss and let out a cold snort. "Ants trying to stop a carriage," he muttered. "You overestimate yourselves." On the other side, Nangong Mingda and his 2 companions launched their assault. They never expected the 8 void gods to actually wound Qin Wuji. Their role was a feint, a necessary distraction to create an opening for the real strike. The 3 true gods manipulated the sacred formation, drawing upon its supreme power. Shimmering laws wrapped around them, manifesting as cold, silver armor. Their bodies swelled until they stood hundreds of feet tall, matching the size and presence of Qin Wuji's avatar. Their faces were veiled by shifting energy, projecting an air of ancient authority that seemed to swallow the mountains and rivers. The onlookers gasped, struck by a strange sense of familiarity. It was as if they were witnessing a legend come to life. The world-suppressing heavenly generals. Xuantian Realm shouted in shock. Lu Fengqi and the others turned to him, seeking an explanation. Long ago, the human emperor built a celestial court that stood above the heavens, Xuantian Realm explained. The world-suppressing generals were officers personally appointed by the emperor to guard that court. So they were the ultimate experts of the ancient era? Lu Fengqi asked. Xuantian Realm shook his head. It was a title, a divine office. There wasn't just one. At the height of the court, there were 3,000 such generals. They were the elite guard of the human emperor. Nangong Mingda and his companions conjured silver spears in their hands. They gripped the weapons tightly, aiming them directly at Qin Wuji's avatar. "We carry the will of the heavenly generals." Mingda roared inwardly. "I refuse to believe we cannot nail down a single heavenly god." The Great Gan formation was actually a fragment of a larger array once used in the celestial court. It contained traces of the blood and will of those ancient guardians. By activating it, the 3 true gods could temporarily take on the form and power of the generals. However, because the formation was incomplete, this power was a fading ember. They could match a heavenly god, but only for a fleeting moment. This was why they used the void gods as a distraction. They knew Qin Wuji's arrogance would be his undoing. It was their only chance for a lethal strike. Spears in hand, they lunged. The points of their weapons tore through the void, causing Qin Wuji's avatar to tremble as a sudden sense of mortal danger washed over him. Qin Wuji's face paled. What is this power? He wondered, his mind racing. How can these ants threaten me? He instinctively tried to retreat, but the timing was too perfect. The trap had already snapped shut. 3 silver spears slammed into his avatar, piercing through the divine light and skewering the form. The power within the spears exploded like a storm at sea, churning through his essence. A series of muffled booms rang out. Frightening cracks spread across the surface of Qin Wuji's avatar. He gasped, coughing up a mouthful of blood as the backlash hit his true body. Bastards! Qin Xiao and the other elder reacted instantly. They cast aside any concern for their reputation and lunged into the fray. To think that 3 heavenly gods were needed to handle 3 true gods. Their prestige would be ruined after today. But they would rather be laughed at than watch Qin Wuji die. Their avatars moved with full force, striking at Nangong Mingda and his team. The shockwaves of their power threatened to shatter the fiery abyss entirely. The sacred formation, anchored only by true gods, could not withstand the focused might of 2 healthy heavenly gods. How shameless, many in the crowd muttered, though their words were tinged with despair. The gap in raw power was simply too wide. Even with ancient secrets and sacred arrays, Great Gan lacked the standing army to finish the fight. Nangong Mingda's expression darkened, but he did not panic. He had expected this. Slaying a god was never going to be easy. To have wounded Qin Wuji this badly was already a staggering achievement. But they weren't finished. Their goal had always been the kill. Ignoring the incoming attacks from the other 2 elders, the 3 true gods swung their spears once more, driving them deeper into Qin Wuji. It was a clear gamble. 3 true gods in exchange for 1 heavenly god. Call for help. Lu Fengqi barked at his companions. Tell them to get here now. Luo Xinglan urged her divine general. The officials of Great Gan washed with grief. Trading their 3 most powerful ancestors for 1 enemy was a hollow victory. Without those ancestors, How could the dynasty survive the coming age? Some began to feel a flicker of resentment toward their new emperor. Why wouldn't she just bow her head? But high on her throne, Nangong Mingyue remained cold and composed. She showed no fear, no grief, and no panic. She sat with the calm of someone who saw every piece on the board. Seeing the other two Qin elders intervene, she let out a short, mocking laugh. Is this the great Qin family? I expected more, she thought. She spoke then, her voice quiet but clear. It is your turn to act. Chapter 402. 2 against 1. It should have been like this from the start. A cold voice rang out from empty space. A hazy, spectral figure stepped through the void. With a flick of a finger, a streak of ghost blue flame cut across the sky like a falling star. It severed the space between them, forming a barrier that blocked Qin Xiao and his companion. Deep, cold flames drifted around the newcomer. Though they were burning fires, they carried a chilling aura of approaching death. Behind the figure, a divine avatar slowly rose, towering 300 feet high. Unlike the avatars of the Qin elders, this form was translucent, filled with silent, burning cold flames. Faintly, a blue phoenix could be seen circling within the light. The aura was silent and freezing, like a hidden current from the underworld, making the skin of every observer crawl. The crowd watched in disbelief. Another divine avatar. Another heavenly god. Did the Great Gan Dynasty truly have such a supreme powerhouse guarding them? How deep was their hidden strength? You focus on pinning down Qin Wuji. I will handle these two. Fairy Jiayue spoke to Nangong Mingda and his team. Her cold eyes remained fixed on the two Qin elders as if she were looking at dead men. Anyone who dared to cause trouble at Nangong Mingyue's ascension deserved only one fate, to lose their head. Jiayue had always considered her own judgment of people to be poor. If it had been better, she wouldn't have been betrayed by her former partner and nearly lost her life. But she was certain that after dying once, her eyes had cleared. Nangong Mingyue was the proof. She had not been wrong about the girl. Mingyue was more than a monstrous talent with a resilient heart. She was deeply loyal. Jiayue had been moved and even a little overwhelmed when Mingyue, upon taking control of the Fire Realm, had offered her 10 of the 12 Phoenix Flame Seeds, treasures that took millions of years to form. These seeds contained the power of nirvana. They were gifts of creation that even a saint would covet. By refining those 10 seeds, Jiayue had successfully reconstructed her body and stepped into the heavenly god realm. Nangong Mingda and the other two ancestors were stunned. Who was this powerful ally? Was she with the emperor, or perhaps a secret protector from the Jiang family? Mingda couldn't be sure, but it didn't matter. They had a heavenly god on their side. The advantage was theirs. Their confidence surged. The way they looked at Qin Wuji changed instantly. They no longer intended to sacrifice their lives just to take him down. Now, they intended to truly slay him. The three true gods gripped their spears and lunged at Qin Wuji. Their attacks grew more violent and strategic, surrounding him in a coordinated killing formation. Qin Wuji's face was twisted with rage, and a sense of panic began to take root in his heart. His avatar had been shattered earlier, causing a severe backlash that had damaged his very foundation. He was currently fighting with less than half of his peak strength, and his inability to manifest his avatar severely limited his options. Meanwhile, his three opponents were bolstered by a sacred formation, each striking with the power of a peak true god. He was in genuine danger. As he struggled to defend himself, it became clear to everyone watching that he was being overwhelmed. To see a heavenly god being suppressed and beaten by three true gods was a shocking sight, but it made sense under the circumstances. He had been arrogant and careless, while Great Gan was prepared with high-level tactics and the borrowed will of ancient generals. He was furious. Being humiliated like this by ants was a stain on his reputation. Yet he had no choice but to hold on and pray that Qin Xiao and the other elder could deal with the mysterious woman and come to his aid. Qin Xiao and his companion stood frozen in the air. Their expressions were grim. They knew Qin Wuji was in trouble, but as they stared at Fairy Jiayue, their hearts were full of caution. A heavenly god. How was it possible for a remote place like the mysterious heaven to produce such a being? The shackles of the world were supposed to be too tight for anyone to reach this level. Are you from the Nangong house? Qin Xiao asked in a heavy voice. He couldn't imagine any other explanation. Jiayue looked at them with icy indifference. There is no need to guess where I come from. I will tell you plainly. I am not from the Nangong house. You have nothing to fear. She didn't want them to retreat out of fear of a great family name. These three fools from the Qin family had to die today. She had nothing else to offer, so she would present their heads as a gift for Mingyue's ascension. Though Mingyue had not officially become her disciple, and she knew the girl didn't trust her as much as she trusted her other teacher, Beiqing, Jiayue already viewed her as her closest student. This was the first time she would truly act as a teacher and protect her. The two Qin elders felt a surge of relief. Even if Qin Wuji was willing to offend the Nangong house, they were still hesitant. If their opponent wasn't from that family, then it didn't matter. After all, how strong could a god from a tiny world be? Their family was backed by a divine sovereign and possessed saint-level inheritances. The difference in their origins meant they should be able to crush her, even if her avatar was 300 feet tall. They were 2 against 1, and they still held the trump card of their own sacred formation. If you insist on interfering, then you leave us no choice. The 2 elders attacked at once, joining forces against Jiang. Their 100-foot avatars manifested weapons out of pure law, creating a terrifying storm of energy. Jiang met them with a disdainful smile. Even among heavenly gods, there were levels of power. She had rebuilt herself using phoenix flame seeds and practiced the same supreme techniques as Manhua. Her talent surpassed almost everyone, and even among the geniuses of this era, she was at the very top. The fact that her avatar was 300 feet tall, while theirs were only 100, was proof enough. Merging her will with her avatar, Jiang swept a finger across the sky. A cold phoenix cry echoed through the world, striking directly at the souls of the crowd. Ghostly cold flames erupted, shimmering and beautiful, as they froze the void and erased the attacks of the 2 elders. Then, she pressed a finger downward. Orchids of blue flame surged from her avatar, transforming into a phoenix that took flight. Moving with ultimate speed, it lunged toward the 2 Qin men. Their avatars began to tremble uncontrollably, as if they could not endure the heat of her fire. Their faces changed. They couldn't believe this flame could threaten their very forms. They retreated immediately, desperate to avoid the fate of Qin Wuji. An avatar was the symbol and the strongest tool of a heavenly god. If it were destroyed, the cost was devastating. Can you 2 hurry the hell up? Qin Wuji's voice echoed through their minds as he struggled to hold on. There are 2 of you against 1, and you still can't win. Chapter 403. Reinforcements arrive. Qin Shao and his companion felt a surge of helplessness. This opponent is incredibly strong, he shouted back. Especially those flames. They can directly damage the divine avatar. They could fight to the death if forced, but they valued their lives too much to take unnecessary risks. Use the Saint Array. The other Qin elder barked. Filth. Qin Wuji cursed under his breath. It was unclear if he was insulting his teammates or regretting his own arrogance. Regardless, they had lost all face today. Still, Qin Wuji acted decisively and threw out a Saint Array diagram. Survival came first. The diagram unfurled in the air, and the 10 fiends' heaven-slaying formation manifested instantly. A rolling tide of malevolent energy erupted like a wall of black clouds, instantly veiling the sky and suppressing the light of the Great Gan formation. The air thrummed as the terrifying energy solidified. 10 grotesque shadows of demon gods slowly rose between heaven and earth. They were vicious and primal. A single glance at them brought a bone-chilling dread, as if one were staring directly into the eyes of death. A Saint Array. Fairy Juyue's eyes flickered. A dark premonition took root in her heart. The power of a Saint Array was undeniable. After all, it was how the 3 ancestors had suppressed Qin Wuji. But there was a critical difference now. This array was being controlled by 3 heavenly gods. The might they could unleash was far beyond anything the Great Gan ancestors could manage. She was confident she could stand against the 3 Qin elders in a direct fight, but against a Saint Array of this caliber, even her own survival was no longer guaranteed. The spectators were equally terrified, trembling under the weight of the formation's malice. Many inwardly cursed the Qin family. It was shameless enough for 3 gods to descend upon a lower realm, but to bring a Saint Array as well was overkill. Kill them. With the array active, the confidence of the Qin elders returned. They looked at Jiang and the 3 ancestors with bloodthirsty cruelty. You should be proud, Qin Wuji sneered. You forced us to reveal the trump cards we prepared for the mysterious expert of the Jiang family. He merged his will with one of the demon gods and sent it charging toward the 3 ancestors. The malevolent energy surged like a vast ocean. The demon god loomed like a titan from the dawn of time, bringing its massive fist down in a crushing blow. Thunder rolled as the fist pulverized the void. He poured more of his Dao power into the array, summoning a second demon god to join the assault on Jiang. Her face turned pale. She was reaching her limit, and she knew it. Worse, she couldn't spare a single thought to help the 3 ancestors. Would this day of celebration truly end in a bloodbath? This is insane, Granny 7 Stars muttered, her heart hammering against her ribs. Gods and Saint Arrays, it was too much. As a mere void god, she felt like an ant among giants. How can anyone help? She thought with a bitter smile. She quickly sent a message to the goddess, detailing the situation so her superior would know she wasn't just standing by. She was truly powerless. Amitba. The demon-subduing Arhut closed his eyes with a look of sorrow, as if he couldn't bear the tragedy. No one noticed the slight upward curve at the corner of his mouth. After this, Great Gan would be broken. The fall of such a hegemon would be the perfect chance for the Buddhist sect to expand into the Middle Province and unify the mysterious heaven. Ing Sihai shook his head and looked away. He could interfere, but doing so would disrupt his long-term plans. His bond with Great Gan wasn't deep enough to justify the risk. If the dynasty fell today, it was simply their fate. He couldn't even change his own destiny, so why meddle in the affairs of others? When the myriad races are absent, We only fight among ourselves. Humans are always the same. Ing Sihai laughed softly, a cold sound that suggested he had seen far too much of the darker side of human nature. Where are they? Luo Xinglan hissed at Desolate 12. The general grinned. Do not worry, goddess. They have arrived. Deep within the void, primal ripples began to spread. All 12 of the desolate heaven divine generals had assembled, every one of them a true god. At their head was Desolate One, accompanied by a massive divine avatar, a heavenly god. The entire foundation of the Desolate Heaven sect is here, 12 said, trying to ease her mind. Just in case, they brought their own saint array. At your command, these 3 Qin elders will be dead in an instant. Where are the ancestors? Lu Fengqi growled into a communication talisman. He didn't care if he was speaking to his elders. His tone was furious. If anything happened to his sister-in-law's ceremony because they were late, he would wake his grandfather and have them all locked away for centuries. Calm yourself. We are here. High above the clouds, 5 ancient, blurred figures appeared. Their auras were decaying yet terrifying, each accompanied by a massive divine avatar. 5 heavenly gods had arrived from the Forbidden Zone. Nangong Mingyue watched the chaos from her throne. Her eyes wavered as the Qin family's saint array exerted its dominance. She hadn't expected them to be this well-equipped. Must I truly use that power? She wondered. The Earth Emperor had told her that the Phoenix destiny belonged to her, but she was still afraid that embracing it fully would mean losing who she was. As Qin Wuji's demon god closed in on the 3 ancestors, life and death hung by a thread. Mingyue steeled her resolve. She had no more time to hesitate. She reached for the Phoenix destiny within her soul, prepared to accept its full weight. At the same time, Luo Xinglan shouted, "Move now." The 12 generals prepared to launch their array, and Lu Fengqi gave the order for the 5 ancestors to descend. But in the next heartbeat, everyone froze. Nangong Mingyue, the desolate heaven generals, and the 5 ancestors from the Forbidden Zone all stopped mid-action. Their expressions turned to pure shock. Every person in the arena stared at the center of the battlefield, eyes wide in disbelief. A middle-aged man in a white robe had appeared out of nowhere. Without a sound, he swung a simple, broad blade and took Qin Wuji's head clean off. Chapter 404, Great Gan, Immeasurable Depth. How dare you cause trouble at my disciple's coronation? What rubbish! Bei Qing let out a cold snort. Holding Qin Wuji's head in one hand, he swung his blade with the other. The strike unleashed a sky-spanning surge of fiery slaughter. An indescribable, terrifying blade light, wrapped in grim and violent flames, instantly annihilated the demon god standing before the 3 Great Gan ancestors. Bei Qing then looked toward Nangong Mingyue high on her dragon throne. His gaze softened, filled with pride mixed with a trace of heartache. This child must have suffered so much to reach this day. Disciple, I am late. I did not have time to prepare a proper gift. I will take the head of this dog of a god to celebrate your day. Bei Qing gave an apologetic smile. He tossed Qin Wuji's head into the air and fired a streak of blade energy to nail it firmly into the void. He turned his chilling gaze toward the crowd, sweeping over the assembly before locking onto the 2 remaining Qin elders. He laughed loudly. My disciple ascends today. Let the blood of gods be spilled to bless her eternal reign. 2 months ago, he had traveled in search of a breakthrough. He had wandered into the boundless sea at the edge of the eastern province, where he encountered a dying saint. They struck a deal. Through a sacred grafting of power, his cultivation was pushed directly into the peak of the heavenly god realm. He was a heavenly god who possessed the lifetime experience of a saint. He could essentially be viewed as a saint who had fallen back into the god realm. In terms of combat power, these Qin family fools were not fit to be mentioned in the same breath. Today, as a teacher, he could finally stand behind his student. Bei Qing moved like a howling gale, shielding Fairy Jiayue. He swung his blade again. The blade light roared like a firestorm. A moment later, the demon gods controlled by Qin Shao and his companion were cut down. Rest for a moment. These 2 are mine. Bei Qing spoke flatly, his eyes fixed on the 2 elders, his killing intent overflowing with an overbearing sharpness. Did you think you could touch my disciple? You seek death. Bei Qing gripped his blade and flickered through the air, charging at the 2 elders with unparalleled dominance. The violent blade energy shook the heavens, showing a courage that would slay gods and crush Buddhas. The 2 Qin elders were terrified. They manipulated their divine avatars in a desperate attempt to block him. The blade energy slashed through, cutting directly through their Dao power and leaving shocking gashes on their avatars. What kind of blade technique is this? How can it wound a divine avatar? Qin Shao cried out in horror, his heart gripped by fear. Before he could react, Bei Qing was upon them again. Waves of fiery blade light crashed down like a storm at sea. Each strike was continuous, with the power stacking higher and higher. Each swing was deadlier than the last. The elders felt their souls trembling. They desperately activated the 10 Fiends array, summoning the remaining 7 demon gods to block Bei Qing. Even so, the effect was minimal. Bei Qing was simply too ferocious. 1 man and 1 blade against 7 demon gods. Using that terrifying, wide-sweeping style, he suppressed them with absolute power. It was a one-sided beating. It was only a matter of time before the 7 demons were destroyed. The Qin elders were shaken to their core. Where did this monster come from? How could Great Gan possess such a terrifying expert? To suppress 7 demon gods at once. This person's realm must have reached the divine sovereign level. Call for help. Get reinforcements. Qin Shao shattered a communication talisman, pleading for the clan leader to save them. Fairy Jiayue watched Bei Qing, her mind blank with shock. When did Bei Qing become this powerful? He had been stuck at the half-step sovereign level for so long. Beheading Qin Wuji was one thing. The man was already wounded, but these 7 demon gods were different. They were strong enough to threaten a divine sovereign. Has he actually reached the sovereign realm? Jiwa wondered, unable to accept the reality. Bei Qing used to be a minor figure. To see him undergo such a transformation was a greater shock than if a saint had descended. The spectators were stunned, staring at the white-robed figure in awe. This was Nangong Mingyue's teacher? Suddenly, it made sense. With a backer like this, how could she not rise to the top? Amitba. The demon-subduing Arhut chanted a prayer, though his expression betrayed a hint of disappointment. The fate of Great Gan. No, the fate of Nangong Mingyue is truly resilient. Ing Sihai shook his head and laughed. The desolate heaven generals stood in the void with strange expressions. With such a powerhouse on her side, they weren't needed at all. They quietly withdrew. We underestimated the strength of Great Gan. Desolate 12 whispered to Luo Xinglan. She nodded with a self-deprecating smile. She had been worried for nothing. In her past life, Nangong Mingyue was the divine Phoenix Empress. These threats were nothing to her. A divine sovereign? The 5 heavenly gods from the Forbidden Zone watched from the clouds. The leader of the group shook his head in wonder. This man is at the peak of the heavenly god realm, but his methods have far surpassed those limits. Great Gan is immeasurable. The 5 ancestors retreated. They were ancient and lacked the vitality to waste their lives watching a fight that was already won. As they left, the lead ancestor's voice rang in Lu Fengqi's mind. Your judgment is good. Great Gan is worth befriending. Lu Fengqi blinked, then muttered to himself. Is it Great Gan that's worth it? No, it's my sister-in-law. It's brother Jiang. Nangong Mingyue watched her teacher battle the 7 demons, her eyes growing misty. Teacher. She had not yet repaid him for his guidance, yet he was still there, protecting her. In the Earth Emperor's secret realm, the Emperor saw Bei Qing appear and relaxed his posture. The tension left his face. The phantom drinking across from him let out a sigh of relief. Please, stay calm, the phantom said with a wry smile. If you had acted, the nature of this situation would have changed completely. The Earth Emperor knew he had overreacted, but he didn't back down. Instead, he glared at the phantom. You watch over the mysterious heaven, yet you allow outsiders to descend. This is your failure. The phantom went silent, his expression turning helpless. Jiang Changshu broke the order of heaven and reached the true god realm early. He caused the world's barriers to fade decades ahead of schedule. Everything is accelerating now. Outsiders descending is an inevitable result of that speed. I have no right to interfere. You know I am just a gatekeeper. The Earth Emperor nodded. He knew the phantom spoke the truth. The arrival of the Great Age was ahead of schedule. This white-robed boy receiving the saint's power was his own destiny, even if it happened 10 years early. The rules are fixed, but people are not. The Emperor poured a cup of tea for the phantom. The Qin family will not let this go. A divine sovereign will descend soon. If this escalates, the eyes of the Dao Saint realm will turn toward us. When that happens, you cannot simply stand by. Chapter 405, Slaying More Gods. The phantom reached out to take the teacup, his movement freezing mid-air. He felt as if he were sitting on a bed of needles. It was almost inconceivable that a being as great as the Earth Emperor would open a back door for a few youngsters, asking for a compromise that violated the established rules. This does not seem like your style, the phantom said with a forced smile, not daring to take the tea. I have grown old, but I am not a decaying fossil, the Earth Emperor replied with a faint smile. These children are worth it. The phantom was stunned. He stared at the old man and saw a smile that was kind, gentle, and profoundly fatherly. He had stood by this man's side for countless ages and had never once seen him smile in such a way. The phantom fell into a long, silent struggle of hesitation and deep thought. Finally, he let out a free and easy laugh and took the teacup from the Earth Emperor. He drained it in a single gulp. It is not often that you ask for a favor, he said. How could I possibly refuse? As the tea settled, the phantom began to solidify, revealing his true form and features. He appeared as a handsome young man, though the deep lines at the corners of his eyes and the ancient weariness in his gaze told of the vast eons he had lived. Had anyone else been there to see him, they would have recognized his identity with a shock. This was the master of the flying, immortal pavilion. The Earth Emperor chuckled, satisfied with the response. He leaned back over his stove to continue brewing tea, adding with a meaningful look, it is a good thing to be flexible. Otherwise, once things escalate and spiral out of control, you will find you can no longer manage them even if you wanted to. The master of the flying, immortal pavilion frowned, his heart stirring with unease. He did not dare question the emperor's foresight. If he remained passive and allowed the Qin family's sovereign to descend, or permitted a mass arrival from the Dao Saint realm, would the mysterious heaven truly fall into chaos? Who could possibly possess the power to cause such a catastrophe? Was it that saint in the Forbidden Zone? No. He instinctively rejected that idea. That saint was under his direct surveillance and had already agreed not to interfere with the current state of the mysterious heaven. Besides, in the eyes of the Earth Emperor, that saint was likely not even worth mentioning. Could it be? The Phantom's thoughts raced. He cast a glance toward Jiang Xuan, who was currently amidst the chaotic heavens, and a startling realization struck him. The Longevity Jiang family? Above the Great Gan Palace, the battle raged on. Qin was unleashing a level of combat power that defied logic. With a single blade in hand, he had spent less than 15 minutes systematically annihilating the 7 demon gods one by one. The final demon god fell, its energy exhausted. The 10 fiends' heaven-slaying formation collapsed, and the array diagram flew back into the trembling hands of Qin Shao. The 2 Qin elders were deathly pale, their spirits shaken to the core. They were terrified. After this brief exchange, they finally sensed their opponent's true cultivation, the peak of the heavenly god realm. This realization brought them no comfort. If a divine sovereign had broken their array, they could have accepted it. But this man was also a heavenly god, yet he stood so far above them that they had no power to strike back. He had crushed their most powerful demons and shattered one of the Qin family's 3 great saint arrays with brute force. It made no sense. This was an array that had once tasted the blood of sovereigns. The most terrifying part was that he had done it all without even manifesting his divine avatar. Was this man truly just a heavenly god? Who are you? Qin Shao demanded, his voice heavy. Do you truly wish to form a blood feud with the Qin family for the sake of Great Gan? Qin laughed in derision and raised his blade once more. I hope that in your next life, you have ears that can actually understand human speech. You go too far. Qin Shao shrieked in rage. No matter how high your combat power is, you are still just a heavenly god. Our family has a divine sovereign guarding us. You are a dead man. The 2 elders commanded their divine avatars to move forward and stall Qin. Meanwhile, they retreated thousands of feet and activated a joint formation. They poured massive amounts of Dao power into the array, forcing open a temporary spatial corridor. We welcome the clan leader. They roared. Divine light from the spatial rift shook the world for 10,000 miles. The void shattered inch by inch, revealing a deep and boundless corridor. A massive, hazy figure instantly imprinted itself upon the minds of all living beings. A terrifying, almost supreme aura surged from the other end of the corridor like a vast ocean, covering the entire middle province. Impudent. A minor god dares to provoke the Qin family? You shall die? The voice arrived before the person, a thunderous roar that shook the 9 heavens and the mountains below. Heavy pressure descended upon every living creature. It felt like the end of the world, a dark disaster that made it hard to breathe and left souls trembling in terror. This was the leader of the Qin family, Qin Kongdao, a divine sovereign. He was a peak expert among the gods, a being whose level of existence had surpassed human understanding. One more step, and he would earn the title of a longevity saint. He had already glimpsed supreme power, and his will was one with the world, allowing him to dominate the very laws of reality. Under his gaze, the Great Gan Palace was squeezed by the surging momentum of heaven and earth. Everything was forced into a standstill. Even Qin's movements became sluggish. His bones began to creak and pop under the immense pressure. Qin possessed combat power beyond his realm, but Qin Kongdao was a peak divine sovereign. He stood only a single step away from being a saint. The gap was a crushing weight. Ultimately, a heavenly god was still just a god. With their leader arriving, the 2 Qin elders finally breathed a sigh of relief. The fear in their eyes was replaced by killing intent and scorn. This is the price for offending the Qin family. Qin Shao sneered. If you kneel now and beg for mercy, and serve us as a slave for 10,000 years, the leader might leave you a path to live. Since this man had such incredible power at the heavenly god level, he would be a valuable war slave for the family in the upcoming regional wars. You talk too much, Qin countered with a smirk. He had no time for fools who celebrated before the fight was over. An 800-foot divine avatar surged forth behind him. To the shock of everyone watching, the avatar suddenly shrank and merged directly into his own body. Merging the avatar into the self? Was such a thing even possible? With a deafening boom, an endless storm of blade energy erupted from within Qin. It surged like a volcanic explosion, shattering the oppressive pressure Qin Kongdao had exerted over the battlefield. He raised his blade and struck at the 2 elders once more. Die! Qin roared. The faces of the 2 elders twisted in horror. Their pupils contracted as a wave of cold dread washed over them. They were paralyzed by the sudden proximity of death. Leader, save us! They screamed. How dare you! Qin Kongdao roared, accelerating his efforts to break through the world barrier. The barrier of the mysterious heaven had weakened, but it still existed. For a divine sovereign, It was like moving through thick mud. It took time to shatter. Unfortunately for the Qin family, the time it took to break the barrier was far longer than the time it took for Bei Qing to swing his blade. It was already too late. A stunning streak of blade light sliced through the sky like a falling star, briefly blinding everyone in the middle province. Scalding blood sprayed across the air as two heads, their eyes wide with shock and rage, were sent flying. Two heavenly gods of the Qin family had fallen. But Bei Qing was not finished. With a wave of his hand, he sent out two more streaks of energy, nailing the heads into the void alongside the head of Qin Wuji. A family should stay together, after all. Finally, Bei Qing pointed his broad blade toward the spatial corridor where Qin Kongdao was charging forward. He gave a cold laugh. "I will be waiting for you right here." Qin Kongdao froze in disbelief. This man had actually dared to slay his elders right before his eyes. He was beyond furious. He was consumed by rage. "You bastard!" he screamed. Chapter 406, Seeking Help from the Jiang Family. Crack, crack, crack. The crisp sound of space splintering echoed through the air. Consumed by rage, Qin Kongdao had finally shattered the world barrier of the mysterious heaven and forced his way through the spatial corridor. He stood tall in the void, his vast authority rippling outward like a descending god. The world for 10,000 miles seemed to sag and collapse, unable to withstand the sheer weight of his presence. The earth fractured, and the sounds of the Dao rolled through the air like endless thunder. A sudden storm tore through the sky as heavy black clouds piled up in layers. In an instant, the entire middle province fell into darkness. The suffocating pressure caused millions of living beings to tremble. It was as if they were facing an apocalyptic disaster, left with no choice but to wait for death in despair. This was a divine sovereign. His will was one with the world. With a single thought, he could alter the weather. With another, he could dominate the laws of reality. If the heavenly god realm marked the mastery of the Dao through the manifestation of an avatar, then the sovereign realm was the pinnacle of external power. A sovereign no longer just borrowed power. They replaced the natural rules of the world with their own. One more step, and one would fuse their own Dao internally to break free from the constraints of heaven and earth entirely. Success meant becoming a saint, a being of eternal life. "You deserve to die." Qin Kongdao looked down at Bei Qing, his voice a chilling, divine echo. He pressed a finger downward. The surrounding space twisted and warped. An indescribable force, woven with the laws of 10,000 methods, squeezed toward Bei Qing. A sense of total helplessness took hold, a crushing weight that felt like drowning in an unbreakable current. Bei Qing could only watch as his vitality was eroded and stripped away. His body shuddered violently. His fiery blade energy flared and flickered in a desperate, instinctive struggle for survival. But the effect was agonizingly small. Had Qin Kongdao been a newly ascended sovereign, Bei Qing might have had a chance to fight back or even achieve a stunning upset. The reality was far bleaker. Qin Kongdao was a peak divine sovereign, only a single step from the saint realm. He could manipulate the very fabric of the world. Wherever he stood was his kingdom, and his will was law. The various powers and experts of the mysterious heaven watched with a heavy sense of dread. They didn't even have the energy to mourn for the stranger about to die, or to sigh over the fact that even Great Gan could not withstand the Qin family. They were too busy struggling to breathe under the weight of the sovereign's pressure. If they felt this way from the mere aftershocks, how could Bei Qing possibly survive the direct focus of that power? It seemed there was no way to turn the tide. Does Great Gan have any cards left? The question hung in the air. Even though everyone knew a sovereign's arrival usually signaled the end of a battle, Great Gan had already revealed two unexpected heavenly gods. This led people to wonder if there were still hidden depths yet to be seen. Furthermore, the Nangong House of the Dao Saint Realm stood behind the dynasty. Would they intervene now that a sovereign had appeared? And then there was the Jiang family. Given the relationship between Jiang Xuan and Nangong Manhua, it made no sense for the Longevity Jiang family to remain silent. "Goddess." Desolate 12 saw Luo Xinglan hesitating, and his heart skipped a beat. Surely she wasn't planning to wake the great desolate ancestor now? He leaned in and whispered a warning. "Great Gan's foundations are immeasurable. They must have a countermeasure. Please stay calm. Besides, the Jiang family hasn't shown their hand yet. If Great Gan is truly in danger, I doubt they will sit idly by." Hearing the name of the Jiang family allowed Luo Xinglan to suppress her impulse, but her expression remained conflicted. Great Gan had close ties to the Nangong House in the higher realm, but a cross-realm intervention required preparation and the construction of a spatial tunnel. They didn't have that kind of time. Their only hope was the Longevity Jiang family. After all, the world knew that a mysterious expert from the Jiang family had once slain a heavenly god at the Demon Denver. That person was almost certainly a divine sovereign. Chapter 407, Saints Awaken, Total Chaos. "No need," Nangong Manhua said, her voice heavy and resolute. Putting aside whether the Longevity Jiang family possessed a divine sovereign, would there even be time for them to arrive? Furthermore, she lacked a communication talisman to reach them. Was she expected to call out to the void and hope for an answer? The chances of the Jiang family's mysterious expert watching this exact spot at this exact moment were slim. Jiang Xuan had been honest with her. She knew the identity of that mysterious protector, her future mother-in-law. But that woman was currently trapped within a forbidden zone, facing her own struggles. It was unlikely she could come, and even if she could, the price would be immense. Nangong Mingyue refused to let her future mother-in-law suffer such a cost just to solve her problems, especially when she still had one final move left. Nangong Mingyue turned her focus inward, reaching for the phoenix destiny buried deep within her soul. A terrifying aura surged from her body. Her presence shifted, becoming cold, majestic, and authoritative, as if a supreme being were slowly opening its eyes. Suddenly, the world of the Middle Province went still. Every living being fell into a brief state of stasis. Their souls were frozen, unable to process a single thought. Even a peak divine sovereign like Qin Kongdao was caught in the temporal lock. A defiant, piercing phoenix cry echoed in the minds of millions. It sounded like the primal music of creation, clearing the air and acting as the first spark of light in a dark, chaotic universe. Damn it! The Earth Emperor cursed, losing his composure as he bolted upright. His eyes were wide with worry. He could accept the girl becoming the next phoenix if she chose it freely, but he hated seeing her forced into it by desperation. She was only in the heaven element realm. Merging with the phoenix destiny now was a gamble. She might become a successor, or she might simply become a mindless puppet consumed by ancient memories. The Earth Emperor spun toward the master of the Facian Pavilion. Are you going to do something about this? Because if you won't, I will. The Pavilion Master panicked and rose quickly. Calm down, Elder. I am going now. He stepped out of the Earth Emperor's secret realm, leaping across the void toward Great Gan. Despite this, the Earth Emperor remained uneasy. He projected his voice directly to Nangong Mingyue. Child, the power of the Phoenix Destiny is more than you can handle right now. Stop immediately. Help is on the way. The Qin sovereign cannot harm your master. Besides, your master received the empowerment of a saint. He is not that weak. Nangong Mingyue did not listen. Once she had committed to accepting the Phoenix power, the process was irreversible. Back at the Great Gan capital, the shock was palpable. The observers were stunned. Nangong Mingyue was supposedly a novice in the heaven element realm. So where was this world-shaking power coming from? Qin Kongdao watched her with growing suspicion. That aura was far beyond the divine realm. Was she the reincarnation of some ancient powerhouse? Unease turned into killing intent. He could not allow her to continue this transformation, or he might not even be able to protect himself. Qin Kongdao abandoned the wounded Bei Qing and moved toward Nangong Mingyue. With one step, he shattered the sky and reappeared before her, pressing a single finger down to crush her. The onlookers gasped at the shamelessness of a sovereign attacking a junior. You dare! Bei Qing roared, his eyes bloodshot with rage and desperation. He knew the price of her choice better than anyone. A phoenix descending is a disaster, not a blessing. If handled poorly, it could become an extinction-level event for humanity. Those were the words of the saint who had empowered him, the prophecy of the old Taoist. That saint had endured eons in the endless sea, staying alive even as his body rotted, specifically to prevent this. The saint had granted Bei Qing the power of a peak heavenly god with one condition: protect the bearer of the phoenix destiny and prevent her from ever merging with that power. If Nangong Mingyue accepted the phoenix, her consciousness would be overwritten by ancient memories. She would cease to be herself and become a mere vessel for a resurrected entity. Mingyue, let go of the destiny. Bei Qing pleaded. He ignited his life force, throwing himself between his disciple and Qin Kongdao. His heavy blade trembled as fiery energy exploded outward. Luo Xinglan and Lu Fengqi were equally terrified, frantically calling for their own reinforcements. The entire mysterious heaven world shuddered. Deep within the desolate heaven sect, a vast, decaying, and supreme aura emerged. It spread like a rising tide across the southern province. Millions of people found their bodies trembling uncontrollably, struck by an urge to kneel and worship a being at the very top of the hierarchy of life. Somewhere in the void, Jiang Wuji, who had recently reached the true God realm, stepped out and looked toward the sect in shock. Under the leadership of the desolate heaven sect, various forces were currently purging the great Luo sacred ground. Jiang Qing, Jiang Hong, and other young talents were part of that hunt, and Jiang Wuji was there to guard them. But the aura coming from the sect now made even a true god like him feel a sense of impending doom. The sky over the southern province shattered. An endless, dim yellow light poured out from the sect like a sandstorm, covering the heavens in an instant. The desolate ancestor was waking up. Meanwhile, in the hazy, undetectable forbidden zone outside the 5 provinces, a milk-white supreme aura surged from the depths, instantly wiping away the surrounding malevolent energy. The ancient human factions living within the zone were startled. Why was this person waking up now? The era of the great world hadn't fully arrived yet. What the hell is Lu Fengqi doing? An old heavenly god ancestor cursed. Did he actually wake the old man? The saint was rising. The master of the Facian Pavilion, currently rushing toward Great Gan, felt the tremors from the southern province and the forbidden zone. His face went pale. Both the desolate ancestor and the saint were waking up at the same time. It's a mess. Everything is falling apart. The Pavilion Master was terrified. Things had spiraled out of control. He regretted his hesitation. The Earth Emperor had warned him to intervene, but he hadn't believed a conflict between the Qin family and Great Gan could cause such a ripple. He hadn't realized how much centered around Nangong Minghua. He needed to settle this immediately and lull those two ancient beings back to sleep. If the heavenly Dao was fully disturbed and awakened, the punishment would be so severe he wouldn't even be allowed the mercy of death. Using the power of the heavenly Dao, the Pavilion Master tore through space and reappeared above the Great Gan Palace. With a wave of his hand, he disintegrated Qin Kongdao's attack. He gently pushed the frantic Bei Qing aside to safety. Then, he glared at Qin Kongdao, barely suppressing his fury and panic. "I will give you 3 breaths," he snarled. "Get back to the Dao Saint realm, or I will kill you myself." Chapter 408. Touching my daughter-in-law, the master of the Feishan Pavilion? Observers from various factions recognized him and froze in surprise. Since when did Great Gan have ties with the Feishan Pavilion? Throughout the mysterious heaven, the pavilion was a unique existence. Whether it was their dragon ranking released every 5 years to catalog the world's geniuses, or their unshakable status over tens of millions of years, the message was clear. They were mysterious, powerful, and not to be provoked. And yet, no one had ever seen the Pavilion Master leave his post, let alone engage in combat. Qin Kongdao stared at the newcomer, his brow furrowed in shock. He realized with a jolt that he could not sense the depths of this man's power. "And who might you be?" Qin Kongdao asked, his voice cold. "This is a private vendetta between the Qin family and Great Gan. You are overstepping." Internal frustration gnawed at him. He had sent 3 heavenly gods to kill Jiang Xuan and seize the world tree seedling, but the situation had spiraled. Great Gan, a seemingly ordinary power in the mysterious heaven, had a never-ending supply of reinforcements. Now, a man he couldn't even read had appeared to block his path. Had he known it would be this difficult, he might have abandoned the quest for the seedling. But there was no turning back now. 3 of his family's heavenly gods lay dead. That blood debt had to be paid. Furthermore, with the Dao War approaching, the Qin family, the primary combat force of the Dao sect, was in a precarious position. Losing 3 heavenly gods made their situation even more desperate. Acquiring the world tree seedling was their only hope for survival. He looked at the girl on the throne. She appeared to be a reincarnation of a supreme power, nearing the end of her transformation. If he let her succeed, the Qin family would be in grave danger. She could not be allowed to live. He had to stake everything on this fight. "Leave now, or die," the Pavilion Master said. His face was dark with irritation. He had no interest in small talk. He channeled the power of the heavenly Dao and struck. The desolate ancestor and the saint were still in the process of waking. Every second mattered. If he didn't resolve this immediately, the consequences would be catastrophic. Strengthened by the heavenly Dao, his strike easily dismantled the laws of the surrounding space. Qin Kongdao was a divine sovereign, a master of 10,000 rules, but his power meant nothing against the Pavilion Master. His defenses were wiped away with a casual wave of a hand. As the chosen guardian of the heavens, the Pavilion Master was virtually invincible within the mysterious heaven, provided he wasn't facing a saint who had already internalized their own Dao. Even a peak sovereign still had to borrow power from the world. And in this world, the heavenly Dao was supreme. The power of the heavenly Dao? Qin Kongdao retreated 1,000 feet, his eyes narrowing as he finally understood his opponent's nature. He let out a cold laugh. "So, you are the watcher of the mysterious heaven. As a mere gatekeeper, you are interfering with the natural order. Do you not fear the judgment of the heavens for such dereliction of duty?" The Pavilion Master's expression remained grim. It was no surprise a sovereign recognized his identity, but it only fueled his anger. Did he want to interfere? No. If this fool hadn't descended and attacked Great Gan, waking the ancient powers in the process, he would be at home. "Cut the talk," the Pavilion Master barked. "Either get out of the mysterious heaven this instant, or stay here forever as a corpse." He attacked again, his movements sharper and more lethal as he wielded the celestial authority. Qin Kongdao smirked. Now that he knew the Pavilion Master's limitations, his fear vanished. He became eerily calm. "You are a gatekeeper. The very rules you guard are a noose around your neck. You don't dare kill me, and frankly, you can't." Qin Kongdao easily evaded the next strike, speaking with newfound ease. "You were born immortal. You simply got lucky and were picked to use a sliver of heavenly power. Strip that away, and you are an ant. All you can do is use that pressure to suppress me." The Pavilion Master stopped, his eyes burning with rage. The sovereign was right. He didn't dare kill him. He was a proxy for the heavenly Dao, and his actions were bound by the very order he maintained. Interfering was already a violation. A killing blow would bring down a divine reckoning he couldn't survive. Qin Kongdao saw he had hit a nerve and chuckled. "I will stand right here and let you suppress me. I won't even lift a finger against Great Gan. What then? My family isn't limited to just me. With a swift motion, Qin Kongdao tore a hole in the void. He produced an ancient spatial rune and tossed it into the rift, bracing open a shimmering portal. He projected his voice through the corridor, calling for backup. Grand Elders, descend to the mysterious heaven and assist me. In the Kunlun domain of the Dao Saint Realm, two brilliant pillars of divine light pierced the sky at the Qin residence. The terrifying pressure of two sovereigns rippled through the world. The laws of reality surged like a tidal wave, overwhelming the domain. Two Grand Elders stepped out of the Qin estate and into the spatial tunnel to join Qin Kongdao. The surrounding domains felt the shift. Top powers and regional overlords turned their gazes toward the Kunlun domain in confusion. The Dao War hadn't started yet. Why was the Qin family, the vanguard of the Dao sect, deploying sovereigns instead of preparing for battle? Sensing something unusual, various factions sent out scouts and activated spies. Because Qin Kongdao hadn't prioritized secrecy, or perhaps because the major powers had their own ways of watching the mysterious heaven, the details of the conflict reached the hands of every major sect leader. Initially, they laughed at the Qin family's misfortune. It wasn't often they got to see a rival struggle so publicly. But when they saw the words World Tree Seedling, their expressions changed instantly. Gravity replaced amusement. Without hesitation, they summoned their own sovereigns. The seedling was a supreme treasure. Obtaining it meant a chance to ascend, to prove one's Dao, and to achieve eternal life. Any sect that could nurture a world tree could potentially replace the Dao sect itself. Across the Dao Saint Realm, nearly 20 divine sovereigns from dozens of factions opened their own tunnels, racing to the mysterious heaven to intercept the Qin family and claim the prize. Back above the Great Gan Palace, the two Qin Grand Elders arrived. The three sovereigns stood in the air, looking down on the world below. Their collective pressure was stifling. After a brief summary of the events, one of the Grand Elders looked at the Pavilion Master with contempt. You're just a dog guarding a door. Know your place. The two new arrivals locked their auras onto the Pavilion Master, preventing him from interfering any further. Qin Kongdao laughed, ignoring the Pavilion Master's murderous glare. He stepped toward the throne where Nangong Minghua was still merging with the Phoenix Destiny. The world tree was the ultimate goal, but with three sovereigns present, the mysterious heaven was already at their feet. First, he would eliminate this girl. This potential reincarnation was too dangerous to leave unchecked. But as he reached out to strike, the world reacted. Scoundrel! The Earth Emperor's secret realm shook with his furious roar. You seek death. A cold, ancient voice echoed from the desolate heaven sect. You dare presume. A saintly voice boomed from the forbidden zone, vibrating through the very foundation of the mysterious heaven. Qin Kongdao's soul shivered. A sudden, bone-chilling sense of impending death wrapped around him. His mind raced. What was happening? But the surprises weren't over. As he stood frozen in fear, a graceful, hazy figure appeared directly in front of him. To his horror, he hadn't sensed her arrival at all. Her slender fingers, imbued with a power so terrifying it defied description, were already clamped firmly around his throat. It felt as though the Reaper's scythe was resting against his skin. You have the nerve to touch my daughter-in-law? The woman's voice was low and dangerous. You certainly are a bold one. Chapter 409, Heavenly Interference. Qin Kongdao was stunned. He was a divine sovereign. How could his life be held in someone else's hands so easily? Where did this powerhouse come from? Why did a tiny world like the mysterious heaven possess such a terrifying master? And who might you be? Qin Kongdao asked, forcing back his terror. But before he could finish his sentence, a sharp crack rang out. The sound shocked everyone present. In that moment, the collective might of the two other Qin sovereigns seemed to vanish, eclipsed by that single noise. There was no conversation. There were no explanations. A head rolled across the ground. The scene fell into a deathly silence. Everyone stood frozen, looking like stone statues. The two remaining Qin sovereigns were no exception, though their shock was laced with a visceral, paralyzing fear. Their patriarch, Qin Kongdao, was a peak divine sovereign. He was stronger than both of them combined. Even in the vast Dao Saint realm, as long as a saint did not intervene, he was a supreme overlord who could walk anywhere unchallenged. Yet today, before their very eyes, in this small world, a mysterious woman had crushed him like an insect with one hand. What was her realm? A saint? Or something even higher? The two survivors trembled, sinking into the depths of absolute dread. What kind of monster had the Qin family provoked? The master of the Faxian Pavilion was equally dazed. He stared blankly at Qin Kongdao's head on the ground, his mind a complete void. Just like that, a sovereign was dead. It is over, the Pavilion Master thought, his heart turning to ice. The death of a sovereign would drastically accelerate the progression of the mysterious heaven. The heavenly Dao would surely be startled awake. Everything had been moved forward by at least a century. As the guardian tasked with maintaining order, he could not escape the blame. His face turned ash white as he stood there, lost and helpless. Lan Yu glanced at the Pavilion Master with a cold light in her eyes. I gave the Earth Emperor face by letting you handle the situation first, she said sharply. I gave you a chance, and you proved useless. The Pavilion Master choked on his words, bowing his head in shame and regret. He has guarded the mysterious heaven for tens of millions of years. Even if there is no glory in it, there is hard work. Do not make things difficult for him. The Earth Emperor's voice sighed from his secret realm. Now that you have shown yourself, clear up the aftermath quickly. The mysterious heaven cannot fall into chaos yet. Lan Yu's level of power far exceeded the current limits of the mysterious heaven. Her appearance had not just bent the rules, it had shattered them. More importantly, this interference would disrupt the recovery of the human race, forcing them to face the crisis of the 10,000 races far earlier than planned. The humans were not ready. Since the Earth Emperor pleads for you, I will spare you today, Lan Yu told the Pavilion Master. You are a gatekeeper for the heavenly Dao. Try to act like one. Do not be like a dog that only bites when its master points a finger. The Pavilion Master remained silent, nodding heavily. Lan Yu turned her gaze toward Nangong Mingyue on the throne. A hint of helplessness softened her eyes. Why wouldn't this girl just ask her for help? If she had spoken up, Lan Yu wouldn't have cared about the Earth Emperor's plans or the rules of heaven. But the girl was stubborn, preferring to shoulder the burden alone. I wonder when I will finally get to hold a grandson, Lan Yu thought, shaking her head. She had been right. The daughter-in-law her son chose was exactly like her. I hope you can survive this destined calamity, she whispered. Even with her power, she could not interfere with the secrets of a supreme destiny. She could only offer a silent prayer. Lan Yu turned away, her eyes piercing through the distance toward the desolate heaven sect and the forbidden zone. As for the two remaining Qin sovereigns, they were not even worth her attention. She would leave them for her son to practice on later. In truth, if the Pavilion Master hadn't been so indecisive, she would still be in the Xuantian Realm. Did they really think a single sovereign was worth her trip back? Go back, she called out to the ancient desolate ancestor and the saint in the forbidden zone. It is not yet time for your emergence. And who are you? The voices asked, filled with suspicion. They had slept for countless ages and did not recognize her. When had such a brilliant talent appeared in the mysterious heaven? I am from the Taihao, Lan Yu replied simply. The Taihao. The ancestor and the saint fell silent, contemplating the name before retreating back into their slumber. The great era had not yet fully arrived, and the world was still fractured. Waking now would be a waste of their essence, especially since they still carried unhealed wounds from the past. Suddenly, the Pavilion Master began to tremble violently. A massive amount of heavenly Dao power surged into his body, manifesting as a vast, milk-white aura. Lan Yu watched him calmly, waiting. When the Pavilion Master opened his eyes again, they were replaced by a cold, indifferent white light. It was the heavenly Dao itself speaking through him. You should not have acted. This broke the rules. Lan Yu shrugged with a casual smile. My fist is bigger. Breaking a few rules doesn't matter much. The heavenly Dao went still, caught off guard by her bluntness. Your actions have accelerated the process. They will notice this place, and the crisis will arrive much sooner. The consequences are unpredictable. Lan Yu waved a hand dismissively. It has already happened. Instead of blaming me, think about how to fix it. Delay the inevitable as long as you can. You are the heavenly Dao. Surely you have a way. The heavenly Dao fell into a long silence. Could she be any more shameless? For the next 10 years, no battles involving the divine realm shall occur within the mysterious heaven, the heavenly Dao declared. I will shroud this world and try to buy more time. Then that is what we will do, Lan Yu agreed. The heavenly Dao nodded. With a wave of its hand, countless threads of rules wrapped around the mysterious heaven, forming a divine punishment web. A voice then boomed across the provinces, reaching every living soul. For 10 years, all divine realm combat is forbidden within the mysterious heaven. Those who violate this will face divine punishment and be stripped of their reincarnation. The people looked at the sky in shock. A ban on divine combat. As the heavenly Dao withdrew, the Pavilion Master regained consciousness. Feeling as if he had been granted a reprieve from death, he bowed deeply to Lan Yu. I cannot thank you enough for your grace. Lan Yu smiled but did not reply. She grabbed the two remaining Qin sovereigns and stepped through the void, leaving the world behind. In the vast starry sea, she looked at the various spatial tunnels stretching from the Dao Saint realm toward the mysterious heaven. She tapped her finger once. Moonlight descended like a blade, severing every single tunnel. The sovereigns traveling through them were horrified. What kind of power could cut through space so easily? Lan Yu tossed the two Qin sovereigns toward the crowd and issued a warning that echoed through the stars. I do not care why you came. I have only one requirement. For the next 10 years, anyone from the Dao Saint realm entering the mysterious heaven must be below the divine realm. Disobey, and I will destroy your sect and end your bloodline. Lan Yu vanished. The overlords of the higher realm were left in a daze, staring at the space where she had been. When they saw the miserable state of the two Qin sovereigns, a wave of terror washed over them. Was this the same impoverished mysterious heaven they thought they knew? On a barren piece of land outside the mysterious heaven, a young man in simple hemp clothes stood up and patted the dust off his trousers. Well, that was a lot of worry for nothing, he said to the boy beside him. Let's go. He began walking toward an ancient sacrificial altar. The boy followed quickly, looking confused. Master, aren't we going to say goodbye to Senior Qingtian or Senior Changsho? The young man rolled his eyes. I'm the master here. Why should I have to say goodbye to them? Oh, the boy scratched his head. Master, what is your actual cultivation level? I couldn't find any record of you in the family archives. Jiang Feng. The young man glared at him. If you ask one more question, I'm sending you back to the Jiang family right now. The boy shrunk back and shut his mouth. The young man smiled, activated the altar, and prepared to teleport. As they disappeared, his voice drifted through the air. Your teacher is at the peak of the Void God realm. Chapter 410, Calamity Approaches. Inside the Forbidden Zone, Jiang Xuan slowly opened his eyes and looked toward the returning Lan Yu with a soft smile. You worked hard. Stop that useless nonsense, Lan Yu replied, waving him off. Her voice carried a trace of anger as she demanded, you clearly could have stopped this. Why did you let it happen? That is your daughter-in-law. If your son finds out you did nothing while his father, he will hate you for the rest of his life. Jiang Xuan lowered his eyes and sighed deeply. It is better to guide the flow than to block it. That is her destiny. Do you think a fate like hers is so easily changed? Don't play riddles with me. Lan Yu glared at him. Those excuses might work on others, but do you think you can fool me? I know you. If you so much as shift your weight, I already know exactly what position you are about to take. What did that old Taoist tell you back then? Jiang Xuan looked momentarily embarrassed. Suddenly, a streak of mysterious light attached itself to the other side of his face. A sinister, mocking voice rang out with a cold chuckle. You two really don't treat me as an outsider, do you? Shut up. Lan Yu snapped. Your defeat is only a matter of time. You have no say here. She turned back to Jiang Xuan. Speak. What are you thinking? Jiang Xuan hesitated. Lan Yu's temper flared even higher. However, she knew his character well enough to know he wasn't reckless. If he was doing this, he had a reason. If he wouldn't speak, there was a reason for that, too. She sighed and let the matter drop, though her expression remained heavy. Xian has grown up without us by his side, she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. He finally made it through those hard years and was starting to achieve something. He found out about us, and he found the person he loves. If he ever finds out that what happened to Nangong Mingyue was caused by our inaction, Lan Yu's voice broke. He really will hate us forever. Jiang Xuan's expression shifted, and a flicker of panic touched his heart. After a long silence, he spoke in a low, somber tone. The old Taoist failed. The phoenix is irreversible. Above the Great Gan Palace, Nangong Mingyue was still merging with the power of the phoenix destiny. The supreme aura billowed like a vast ocean, spreading a terrifying pressure that made the heart race. The brilliant divine light was beginning to pull inward, a clear sign that the process was entering its final stage. However, the various powers gathered there were no longer focused on her. They were still lost in the shock Lan Yu had delivered, crushing a peak divine sovereign with a casual grip, severing multiple spatial tunnels with a single finger. What kind of power was that? Could that being have already surpassed the divine realm and reached the eternal saint realm? They hardly dared to think about it. In the history of the mysterious heaven, the most recent saint to achieve eternal life was from the Longevity Yao family, and that was as far back as the middle of the ancient era. Since then, the world's spiritual energy had dried up and the land had grown barren. Even reaching the divine realm was a struggle, and the true God realm was a distant dream until Jiang Changsho broke the world's shackles recently. How could there be a saint? This existence defied all logic and shattered their understanding of reality. The era had truly changed. Why not come with me to the Buddhist sect? Our Buddhist son, Jiang Ruilai, has already attained the status of a Buddha and can help resolve your troubles. The five stopped and frowned at the monk from the western province. Was this bald donkey really being this rude? Get lost. Lu Fengqi snapped, not bothering with pleasantries. Even if I were at death's door, I wouldn't need a group of disgusting monks to save me. He walked away without looking back. The other four followed, laughing at the absurdity. A calamity approaching Lu Fengqi? What a joke. The man was the direct grandson of a saint. What disaster would have the courage to land on his head? The Arhut watched them go, a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. Within his folded hands, a golden light flickered briefly. The golden tightening curse had been set. He only needed to wait for the right moment to harvest. A saint's grandson is indeed worthy of becoming a disciple to the Buddhist son, he murmured. The Arhit looked around for his next target for conversion. His eyes fell upon Ing Sihai, the master of a dynasty, not bad. He smiled and walked toward him. Amitba, fellow traveler, please stay a moment. Scram. Ing Sihai barked, waving his sleeve. You would do well not to show off your cheap Buddhist tricks in front of me. The Arhut looked deeply at Ing Sihai. His smile vanished, replaced by an expressionless mask. Amitba, Patron Ing is truly the master of a dynasty. I have seen your strength. He backed away immediately, deciding not to provoke him further. Anyone who could see through his methods was not to be trifled with lightly, especially if it might delay his sect's grand plan. He continued his search for someone destined to join him and soon spotted Luo Xinglan. He stepped into her path with a pleasant smile. Amitba, Patron Luo is exceptionally gifted. You have a predestined affinity with our Buddha. Luo Xinglan's brow furrowed. She was just about to signal Desolate 12 to throw him out when a voice of immense authority thundered through the air. Since when do cats and dogs dare to run wild on my territory? Chapter 411. A single finger incinerates a true god. Humming vibrations of brilliant golden divine flames charged into the highest heavens. Like a shower of meteors, they splashed across the sky, leaving behind an endless trail of fire. The flames surged and churned, weaving together to form a colossal domain of burning heat. Every person present was shaken. They turned their gazes toward the spectacle in stunned silence. There, above the Great Gan Palace, sat Nangong Minghua. Draped in imperial dragon robes and perched high upon the dragon throne, her eyes flickered with divine fire, projecting a gaze of absolute indifference and biting cold. Golden flames stood guard around her body. The great Tao of fire had manifested into physical substance, prostrating itself beneath her feet. Behind her, a magnificent phoenix bathed in golden light spread its wings, radiating a suffocating and terrifying pressure. The phoenix was rapidly merging into Nangong Minghua's body. Its domineering, majestic, and supreme aura crushed down upon everything in the surrounding 8 directions. Nangong Minghua looked down at the demon subduing Arhut. Her voice was cold as she spat out a single word. Scram. My great Gan does not welcome you. The Arhat's expression darkened. A cold bitterness flickered in his eyes. Had this been a private rebuke, like his encounter with Ing Si-hai, he might have simply smiled it off with his usual thick skin. But this young girl had chosen to humiliate him in public, in front of everyone. Did she truly think so little of a golden-bodied Arhut? He was, after all, a true god. The patron has ascended the throne to rule the Great Gan, but you are still only in the Xuantian Realm, the Arhut said coldly. Is such blatant disrespect toward your seniors not a bit too insolent? He did not wish to have a frontal conflict with the Great Gan at this moment, especially with the fate of the Qin family fresh in his mind. However, he was a true god and a golden-bodied Arhut of the Buddhist sect. If he remained indifferent after being scolded by a mere girl, he would lose all credibility. Furthermore, he represented the Buddhist sect. To retreat now would make his entire order a laughingstock. Insolent, Nangong Minghua laughed. Her smile was filled with nothing but disdain. Then, she spoke with a divine resonance, announcing her decree to the world. From this moment forward, no member of the Buddhist sect shall enter the borders of the Great Gan. Those who defy this order shall be executed without mercy. The Arhat's eyes snapped open. He roared in fury. Does the Great Gan truly intend to make an enemy of my Buddhist sect? Enemy? Nangong Minghua snorted. A mere Buddhist sect is not qualified for the title. Now get out. The entire audience was struck dumb. They stared blankly at the figure in dragon robes, shrouded by the phoenix shadow. Their hearts were in turmoil. Nangong Minghua was acting with unbelievable tyranny. The Arhat's face shifted between shades of pale and red. He was hesitating, weighing his options. Should he leave like a dejected dog and become a joke? Or should he fight for his pride and suppress the Great Gan here and now? A hum of Buddhist light surged around him, yet within it, demonic shadows seemed to howl and snarl. His title, Demon Subduing, came from the fact that he had hunted and killed a great demon upon his enlightenment, using that demon's death to confirm his path and imprisoning its soul as his natal divine ability. This poor monk is lacking in talent, but I would like to test the strength of the Emperor of Great Gan, the Arhut said, his voice low and heavy as he looked up at Nangong Minghua. Even a clay statue has 3 points of fire in it. If he retreated now, how could the Buddhist sect ever hope to spread its teachings again? Today, he had to reclaim the reputation of his order. The various factions looked at him with confusion. Had this monk lost his mind? Never mind the current strength of the Great Gan. The heavenly Tao had just issued a decree, warning that divine combat was forbidden. Did he dare to openly provoke the heavens? He might think the Great Gan's protectors were gone, and that the empire wouldn't dare challenge the Buddhist sect, but he should at least realize that the heavenly Tao was not something to be trifled with. The sky was still thick with the signs of heavenly punishment. Was he blind? Suddenly, the sky was filled with the aura of fiery saber energy. Beiqing, dressed in white robes, stepped forward. He held an ancient, simple heavy saber in his hand. The power of a peak heavenly god radiated from him, pressing directly against the Arhut. This movement caused the laws of the heavenly Tao in the firmament to boil, quickly brewing a terrifying lightning punishment. It was as if the moment Beiqing struck, the heavens would strike him down. Beiqing remained unmoved. Heavenly punishment meant nothing to him. As a master, he was here to back up his disciple. Even if the heavens themselves descended, it wouldn't stop him. My disciple told you to scram. Are you deaf? Beiqing looked at the Arhut as if he were already a dead man. He pointed his saber at the monk and barked. Fine then. Come, I will play with you. The Arhut remained calm. Even though he had watched this man slay 3 heavenly gods of the Qin family, he showed no fear. With the decree in place and the punishment looming above, he did not believe the other man would truly risk his life to attack. Ignoring Beiqing, The Arhut looked past him toward Nangong Mingyue. The heavenly Tao has forbidden divine combat, he said. This poor monk is compassionate and does not wish for the Great Gan to offend the heavens. I am willing to suppress my own cultivation level to match yours and seek guidance from the Emperor. Does the Emperor of Great Gan dare to fight me? As he spoke, the Arhut suppressed his aura down to the Tianyuan realm. If I should happen to win, I ask for nothing but that the Emperor retract those thoughtless words. My Buddhist sect is sincere in wanting to establish ties with the Great Gan. He believed he was being more than reasonable, a true god suppressing his own power to challenge a junior. How many people in the mysterious heaven received such treatment? To lose to a true god was not a disgrace. It was an extraordinary honor. Who else in the world could claim to have fought a true god while still in the Tianyuan realm? He would reclaim his sect's honor, go through the motions, hold back his strength, and then both sides could step down gracefully. It would save everyone's face. The scene fell into a deathly silence. Everyone was bewildered. The looks directed at the Arhut were filled with shock. No, it was more than shock, it was disbelief. They didn't care what his secret intentions were. The words coming out of his mouth were simply too explosive. It was the joke of the century. A golden-bodied Arhut, a true god of high standing, was openly challenging Nangong Mingyue, who had only just entered the Tianyuan realm. Do you even hear yourself? They thought. Have you no shame at all? The Buddhist sect. We have certainly seen enough today, the observers whispered. A true god challenging my disciple? Bei Qing was stunned by the monk's gall. He actually laughed from pure rage. How can you even find the nerve to say that out loud? The Arhut lowered his eyes, appearing neither sad nor happy, completely unaffected. He simply asked again, Emperor of Great Gan, will you fight? In your dreams. Bei Qing's face went cold. His saber intent flared. I will give you 3 breaths to get out of the Great Gan. Otherwise, the saber energy pierced the clouds as the fire turned the sky crimson. Even with the heavenly punishment over my head, I will still slaughter you, Bei Qing growled. The Arhut sighed inwardly. He felt he had offered the best possible solution. He had given them enough face. But the Great Gan, having just killed heavenly gods, was clearly too arrogant to accept his kindness. My Buddha is compassionate, he thought, but the people of this world are foolish. If I wish to save them, I must use the methods of a diamond guardian. But right at that moment, the world shook. The fires of the earth and sky contracted violently, surging into Nangong Mingyue's body. A defiant phoenix cry rang out, echoing between heaven and earth. Nangong Mingyue, standing in her dragon robes, had fully merged with the phoenix. She rose slowly and looked down at the Arhut. Your challenge. I accept. Her divine voice was accompanied by the phantom cry of a phoenix. Then, she moved. A golden flash of divine light tore through the void. She was like a phoenix soaring through the 9 heavens, dominating every flame in existence. She pointed a single finger toward the Arhut. Endless flames erupted from the empty air. It was as if the entire world had been replaced by a kingdom of fire, and Nangong Mingyue was its sole queen. She was fast, so fast she was like a passing glimpse of greatness. It was like the first light at the dawn of creation, brief, yet eternal. She was strong, so strong she was like a localized apocalypse. It felt like a catastrophe that could burn the heavens. No matter the creature, no matter the cultivation, there was no escape from this disaster. The Arhut's heart jerked. A sensation of death suddenly enveloped his entire body. His limbs trembled uncontrollably. This was a crisis, a fatal crisis. His expression twisted in shock. This was the Tianyuan realm. Without thinking, his instincts screamed at him to restore his true cultivation. If he tried to face this with Tianyuan-level power, his golden body might keep him alive, but he would be heavily wounded. If he, a true god, was crippled by a girl in the Tianyuan realm, he might as well kill himself and start over. But since Nangong Mingyue had struck, how could she give him the chance to fight back? The phoenix destiny deep within her soul shivered, releasing an indescribable supreme aura. It formed an absolute suppression that could not be resisted. The Arhut's soul froze. He lost all control over his own body. It lasted only for the briefest of moments. Nangong Mingyue's cultivation was, after all, only at the Tianyuan realm. She could only hold the suppression for that long. But it was enough. Her finger descended. The shadow of the fire phoenix dived. Brilliant golden flames splashed everywhere, carrying a terrifying aura that made the spirit tremble. The Arhut was instantly engulfed in a raging inferno. He let out a blood-curdling scream. For a time, he could not extinguish the divine flames. In the span of a single breath, one that felt both short and agonizingly long, his physical body was burned into nothingness. A brilliant burst of Buddhist light erupted from within the fire. The Arhut's soul retreated into his golden core, turning into a streak of light that tore through the void to escape into the distance. Emperor of Great Gan, I will remember this debt for the destruction of my body. His roar echoed across the landscape for a long time. The entire field was frozen. Eyes bulged in sheer terror. A single finger had incinerated a true god. Even though the Arhut had suppressed his cultivation and had been careless, he was still a genuine true god. Had Nangong Mingyu's strength already become this terrifying? Transforming into a phoenix in a single day, burning the 8 desolations. Luo Xinglan's eyes sparkled as she gasped in shock. Chapter 412. Luo Xinglan awakens and travels to the ancestral land. Luo Xinglan stood in the midst of a lingering tremor of the soul. She was not only stunned by the terrifying display of Nangong Mingyu's power, but was also deeply relieved by the scene she had just witnessed. In the memories of her previous life, Nangong Mingyue had famously incinerated the Earth Emperor's secret realm with a single finger, shaking the mysterious heaven and beginning her legendary rise as the God Phoenix Empress who burned the 8 desolations. Luo Xinglan had been plagued by confusion as to why the world-shaking events from her past life were not occurring in this one. She lived in constant fear of a butterfly effect, worrying that the course of history had shifted so drastically that the desolate Heaven Divine sect would be swallowed by the coming chaos. This uncertainty was one of the primary reasons she lacked the confidence to change the future of her sect. In her previous life, she knew exactly which great tribulations were coming and the power levels of the enemies they would face. Even if those foes were formidable, having that knowledge allowed her to prepare effectively. However, the current timeline had diverged so much that her memories had become nearly useless. Put that matter aside for now, Luo Xinglan replied as she gazed down at the sprawling mountains and rivers. The Daluo Holy Land cannot run away. Since they conspired with the demon race, they are already as good as dead. We will simply maintain our current tactics. Once we return to the sect, I will travel to the ancestral land to study the desolate ancient secret arts. When I emerge from my seclusion, we will begin the general offensive and wipe them out in one stroke. Desolate 12 froze. His expression turned solemn as he urged her to be cautious regarding the secret arts. He suggested she wait until she reached the divine realm before attempting them. The desolate ancient secret arts were the very foundation of their sect, but the inheritance was notoriously difficult to grasp and filled with a lethal, ominous energy. Historically, no one besides the founder had ever successfully mastered them. Every goddess who had attempted the study had succumbed to the darkness and perished. Given her current level in the Tianyuan realm, Desolate 12 feared a tragic outcome. However, Luo Xinglan did not waver. Her eyes flashed with blue light as she raised her right hand. The phantom of the Great Yin appeared, noticeably more solid and vibrant than it had been at the Demon Denver. She spoke with absolute confidence, declaring that she would certainly succeed. Back at the Great Gan Palace, the various factions were still reeling from the sight of the Arhat's destruction. Meanwhile, Ing Sihai and the people of the Great Qin Dynasty had already quietly departed. Inside his dragon carriage, Ing Sihai wore an expression of lingering grief and indignation. Even as he moved further away, his gaze remained fixed on the direction of the Great Gan. He smiled bitterly, wondering if Nangong Mingyue could not change her fate even as a phoenix. Then what hope was there for his own success? On the palace grounds, Nangong Mingyue adjusted her robes and sat back upon the throne. She thanked the remaining representatives for attending her coronation and politely suggested it was time for them to leave. Understanding the hidden meaning, the guests offered their final congratulations and dispersed. Once the outsiders were gone, she turned to the officials of Great Gan. She announced that she would be traveling to the Phoenix ancestral land to seek a breakthrough. In her absence, the affairs of the state were to be handled by Nangong Mingda, Fairy Jiyue, and her master, Bei Qing. The officials were stunned by the sudden decision. Bei Qing, in particular, looked on with deep worry. He wondered if the memories within the Phoenix destiny were beginning to overwrite Nangong Mingyu's own personality. She waved her hand, drawing a strand of firepower from the air and combining it with the Empire's luck to forge a flame phoenix seal. She handed it to Bei Qing and named him the Prince Regent of Great Gan. The silence that followed was heavy with shock. The officials, including the Heavenly King, were caught off guard. Their emperor had just ascended the throne, only to announce her departure and appoint an outsider as the regent. While Bei Qing was her master and a powerful heavenly god, he was not originally of the Great Gan. Nangong Mingda felt particularly slighted, wondering why his own role as an ancestor was being overshadowed by an outsider. Nangong Mingyue saw the shifting emotions of the crowd, but offered no explanation. Instead, she summoned the imperial phoenix seal of the state and pressed it down. The luck of the Great Gan manifested in a grand display that enveloped the palace, accompanied by the cry of a phoenix. The officials trembled under the weight of the empire's power. I will not say what I have said a second time, Nangong Mingyue declared. The officials bowed their heads in fear and respect, pledging to obey her decree. They turned to Bei Qing and offered their formal salutations to the new Prince Regent. Bei Qing looked at his disciple with increasing concern. He called out to her, but seeing the cold indifference in her eyes, he felt a shiver of realization. He asked her how the Great Gan should treat the Longevity Jiang family, and, specifically, Jiang Xuan. Chapter 413. Fate cannot be defied. The officials of Great Gan were utterly perplexed. To them, the answer was obvious. Their emperor and Jiang Xuan were already betrothed, and their relationship was known to be intimate. Furthermore, If Jiang Xuan's mother had not arrived today, the emperor likely would have perished. How to treat them? It seemed unnecessary to even ask. To the Great Gan, Jiang Xuan and the Longevity Jiang family were practically kin. However, the expressions of Nangong Mingda and Fairy Jiyue changed abruptly. A realization struck them, and they instinctively looked toward the figure on the dragon throne. When they saw her actually pausing to consider the question, their hearts sank. How to treat the Longevity Jiang family? Nangong Minghua lowered her eyes. After a moment of reflection, she spoke with cool indifference. The Longevity Jiang family saved my life. Such a debt must be repaid. If they ever have a need, Great Gan shall provide its full assistance. At these words, the officials looked up in disbelief. Nangong Mingda and Fairy Jiyue turned pale, feeling a chill run through their veins. Something had gone terribly wrong. Beiqing's face grew dim. He had already guessed the truth. Has it finally come to this? Beiqing felt an immense, stabbing pain in his heart. His precious disciple, whom he viewed as a daughter, had finally broken free from her struggles and achieved greatness, only to become a vessel for the phoenix. He gripped his heavy saber, his entire body trembling. To prevent the descent of the phoenix from becoming a cataclysm for the human race, he was bound by a pact. If Nangong Mingyu's identity was ever overwritten or seized by the phoenix destiny, he was to take her life with his own hands. This was part of the deal. But how could he ever strike her down? Clinging to a final shred of hope, Beiqing looked up at Nangong Mingyue and asked with a shaking voice, "Then tell me, Your Majesty, how shall our Great Gan treat Jiang Xuan?" The entire area fell into a heavy silence. Even those who failed to grasp the nuances of the situation realized something was wrong. Nangong Mingda and Fairy Jiyue watched her with frantic, hopeful eyes. Jiang Xuan. Nangong Mingyu's beautiful brow furrowed. A ripple of emotion flickered in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a flare of anger. She snorted coldly. I treated him with a sincere heart, yet he wanders the world, surrounding himself with other women. Since he was the first to betray me, does he truly expect me to treat him well in return? As if trying to convince herself, her voice smoothed out after speaking those words, becoming flat and detached. Of course, I am not ungrateful. If Jiang Xuan finds himself in trouble, Great Gan may choose to intervene. Everyone present fell silent. Beiqing felt as though a knife were twisting in his heart. He closed his eyes in agony, the corners of them damp with tears. The heavy saber, which had felt almost too weightless to hold moments ago, finally felt heavy again. He tightened his grip with great difficulty. He slowly raised the blade. The fiery saber energy began to rise. The terrifying pressure of a peak heavenly god swept through the area, inciting the rage of the heavenly Dao. Crimson lightning for a heavenly punishment began to gather rapidly in the sky. The crowd was horrified. They looked at Beiqing in shock. What was he doing? Nangong Mingyue squinted at her master, a chill running through her eyes. As my master, you would actually try to kill me? Beiqing gave a bitter, sorrowful smile. He looked up at the looming punishment and reached a quiet resolution. The saint's empowerment had been a monumental blessing, granting him the cultivation of a peak heavenly god and a lifetime of experience. Though it came with countless drawbacks that would prevent him from ever advancing further, it was a miracle most people could only dream of. Yet, as Nangong Mingyue herself had once said, every gift from fate comes with a price already marked in secret. By accepting the saint's power, he could not escape the duty that the saint had guarded for a lifetime, to stop the descent of the phoenix at any cost. The phoenix's arrival is a curse, not a blessing. If not handled with absolute care, it will become the end of the human race, Beiqing whispered to himself. He raised the saber with both hands and began to walk toward Nangong Mingyue. Waves of fiery saber energy ravaged the surroundings, shattering the laws of reality. A primal, murderous aura roared like an unspeakable beast, filling everyone with a cold dread. The pressure of his cultivation grew at an exponential rate, like an approaching doomsday storm. Protect the emperor. Nangong Mingda's face twisted in alarm. He scrambled to activate the palace's holy arrays and summon the strength of the world-suppressing generals. The two other true gods and 8 void gods also manifested their divine forms and Dao powers, staring warily at Beiqing. Regardless of what had changed in Nangong Mingyue, she was the emperor of Great Gan. They could not let her fall. Fairy Jiyue remained where she stood. She watched Beiqing and then glanced at the sky. Her eyes twitched as she guessed the truth, and she let out a long, quiet sigh. The heavenly Dao roared in fury. The power of the punishment surged. The lightning, which had been a standard silver white, rapidly transformed into a deep, ominous blood red. The sheer horror of the crimson punishment shook the entirety of the central province. Many powerful experts looked up in confusion and alarm. It had only been an hour since the ban on divine combat was issued. Who would be foolish enough to throw their life away by defying it so soon? The Earth Emperor stood with his hands behind his back, watching Beiqing through the void. His expression was complicated. So, you wish to fulfill your duty to the human race while also preserving a spark of life for your disciple? He mused. You have chosen to sacrifice yourself. A true man indeed. He turned away and walked toward the chaotic void where Jiang Xuan was located. He waved his hand, guiding strands of the great Dao's origin into Jiang Xuan's body to help him deepen his enlightenment. At the same time, he was intentionally slowing the process to keep Jiang Xuan in his meditative state. The Earth Emperor could not interfere, nor would he. The process had already been accelerated. Any move he made would be noticed by the predatory clans watching from the shadows, even with the heavenly Dao's protection. And even if he could move, he would also have to strike down Nangong Mingyue to eliminate the threat. Though he was only an observer, he saw clearly that the old Taoist's plan had failed. The phoenix was irreversible. Or more accurately, fate could not be defied. For the sake of humanity's future, he should have acted. But he could not bring himself to destroy the girl, especially given his connection to Jiang Xuan. Thus, he decided to let Beiqing fulfill his own version of loyalty and love. Back at the palace, Beiqing continued his march toward Nangong Mingyue, locked in by the blood-red heavenly punishment. His killing intent was sharp and terrifying, yet he walked very slowly. He walked so slowly it seemed as if he were waiting for the strike from above to land. Nangong Mingyue's eyes wavered, showing clear emotional instability, but her expression remained cold and even slightly vicious. She asked him once more, her voice thick with anger. "I honored you as my master. Do you truly intend to kill me?" Beiqing did not lower his weapon, but he continued to smile. His eyes were filled with pain and memory. "I saw my former self in you," he whispered. "Even when you were cast into the dust, you remained unyielding. That heart of yours is precious. As your master, I am so proud. Not only did you return to the path of cultivation, but you became one of the greatest talents in the mysterious heaven." He looked at her on the throne, his smile softening into one of warmth and pride. "It is a pity that my Qingyang sect is too small. Giving it to you now would be meaningless." Nangong Mingyue's eyes twitched as her emotions surged even more violently. And in that moment, the blood-red heavenly punishment fell. Chapter 414. Today, I am taking you home. Rumble. The terrifying blood-red lightning transformed into ferocious divine dragons. Carrying an indescribable aura of destruction, they roared and lunged toward Beiqing. The vast firmament was instantly stained a grim, visceral red. A hair-raising pressure swept outward like a crashing tide. The onlookers paled, retreating in terror. The destructive aura of these blood dragons felt far more potent than the god-revered experts of the Qin family who had come before. This was heavenly punishment, the raw power of the heavenly Dao itself. Even a peak heavenly god could be struck down with ease. Nangong Mingyue deactivated the holy array and watched Beiqing, his expression shifting rapidly. He finally realized the man's true intent. Beiqing wasn't trying to kill the empress. He was intentionally drawing the heavenly punishment upon himself to seek self-destruction. But why? Why feign an assassination attempt and unleash his full power just to force the heavens to annihilate him? Fairy Juyue's eyes flickered. She had suspected as much. As Nangong Mingyue's master, how could Beiqing ever truly bring himself to slaughter his own disciple? Yet, the question remained, why choose this path? On the throne, Nangong Mingyue's emotional fluctuations grew more violent. Her expression shifted into a mask of internal struggle. Seeing this, Beiqing's eyes brightened with a glimmer of hope. "If my death can awaken your will," he thought, "then it is worth it." He looked up at the roaring dragons of lightning and made no move to resist. He stood ready to sacrifice himself for his cause. Suddenly, Princess Xuan of the Great Gan stepped out from the ranks of officials with an air of grim determination. She faced Nangong Mingyue and bowed deeply. "I was the one who brought your majesty back from the borderlands. I have watched you grow every step of the way until your coronation today. My heart is filled with pride. I have prepared a celebratory gift, and I hope your majesty will accept it." The crowd's attention shifted instantly. Most were bewildered. Look at the situation. Look at the chaos. Even a blind man could see the world was ending. Yet she was presenting a gift? It seemed like madness. However, Zixuan's appearance seemed to suppress Nangong Mingyue's inner turmoil. The empress drew her gaze away from Beiqing and looked at the princess. Her voice regained its flat, detached tone. "What is it?" "A true divine artifact," Zixuan replied, holding the object out with both hands. The artifact was warm to the touch, glowing with a soft, misty light that commanded natural reverence. It was a jade comb. Specifically, it was the jade comb Jiang Xuan had sent to Nangong Mingyue during the Yushan prefecture competition. Early that morning, before Nangong Mingyue had dressed for her coronation, she had summoned Zixuan. She had placed this comb in the princess's hands with a strict instruction. "If a day comes when my personality changes entirely, when my attitude toward Jiang Xuan shifts fundamentally, give this back to me." Zixuan had been confused and frightened, sensing something was wrong, but she had tried to comfort the empress. She told her that with her potential, her future was bright and no accidents would happen. She argued that the comb, a token of love from Jiang Xuan, was too precious to be held by anyone else. Nangong Mingyue had simply smiled and replied, "If nothing goes wrong, then keep it until my wedding day." You can give it back to me then as part of my dowry. Those words still rang in Zixuan's ears. She had never expected the accident to arrive so soon. She still didn't understand what had happened to the Empress, how her strength could skyrocket while her heart turned to stone, but she knew she had to act. This comb might be the only thing that could save Nangong Mingyue. This is. Nangong Mingyue's eyes twitched violently. Old memories flooded her mind. The emotions she had just stabilized surged again, more powerful and desperate than before. Beiqing turned his head, filled with sudden joy. Could it really be working? He remembered that comb. Jiang Xuan had sent it long ago. He recalled Nangong Mingyue's confident refusal at the time, her declaration that she had to be herself before she could be someone's fiancé. This item held immense significance. It truly had the power to call her back. Quickly, Beiqing suppressed his cultivation and used a technique from the saint's memory to mask his presence. If there was a way to wake his disciple and stop the descent of the phoenix without dying, he would take it. The blood-red dragons in the sky froze. Having lost their target, they circled aimlessly, unable to lock on. But the situation within Nangong Mingyue was not so simple. While the jade comb touched her instincts and stirred her will, the phoenix destiny deep in her soul shook in response. A massive wave of memory fragments surged forth, instantly drowning out the warmth of her human past. Her emotional struggle began to fade. "You are thoughtful," Nangong Mingyue said tonelessly. She waved her hand, summoning the comb into her palm. Golden divine flames flickered around her fingers, threatening to melt the jade into nothingness. "Fine. I guess it's up to me after all," Beiqing sighed. He dropped his concealment, letting his heavenly god aura erupt once more. The dragons of punishment locked on instantly and roared as they dove. At that exact moment, deep within the chaotic void of the Earth Emperor's secret realm, Jiang Xuan's profound meditation came to a sudden halt. The black hole foundation in his dantian shuddered. It released a unique, supreme aura, nameless, indescribable, the very origin of all things. The phantom of samsara trembled as if in fear. The world tree seedling swayed violently, terrified. It wondered what could have possibly made its master this angry. The supreme aura enveloped Jiang Xuan, protecting his enlightenment while pulling his consciousness away from the laws he was studying. The aura then flowed into the phantom of samsara. Understanding the intent, the phantom began to spin rapidly, fueled by the energy of the black hole. It unleashed the full power of the samsara secret art, pulling Jiang Xuan's mind into a grand, revolving dream. The Earth Emperor gasped, his eyes wide with suspicion. Is that the samsara secret art? He wondered why Jiang Xuan would suddenly trigger such a technique while attempting to break through to the next realm. Simultaneously, at the Great Gan Palace, Nangong Mingyue's eyes grew hazy. She became dazed, as if her soul were being pulled away. She, too, drifted into the great dream of samsara. "Have you come?" In a gray, misty expanse, at the very peak of countless terrifying figures, sat a phoenix. Perched upon a supreme throne and wreathed in brilliant divine flames, she looked down at the figure who had broken through the barriers of the era. She smiled coldly. "But I cannot go back." Jiang Xuan looked at the surroundings and then at himself, feeling slightly lost. In his left hand, he held the Fusang tree burning with solar divine fire. In his right, he held the Wutong tree that anchored the abyss fire realm. This dream again? He wondered why he had returned here when he was supposed to be in meditation. Around him, the terrifying figures began to grin, eyeing him as if he were a rare delicacy. "Fate cannot be defied." A figure sitting just below the phoenix sneered. "You ignorant mortals think you can change your destiny? How laughable." Jiang Xuan looked up. Perhaps influenced by the power he held in this dream, he didn't care about the speaker. His gaze remained fixed on the stunning figure at the peak. A wave of unbidden sadness washed over him, mixed with powerlessness and guilt. He almost succumbed to the emotion, but this time his consciousness was clearer. He snapped himself out of it. He had a wife and a life to get back to. There was no reason for this despair. Whether it was the familiarity of the scene or the bond of their lives, Jiang Xuan remembered a night at the Timing Palace. He and Nangong Mingyue had talked about the future, and he clearly remembered her saying she hoped the future wouldn't end up like that dream. He had known back then that she was worried, but he'd had no solution other than a few words of comfort. Now that he was in this dream again, he felt he had to do something. He met the phoenix's indifferent gaze. "Stop talking such nonsense." The entity he inhabited in this dream laughed, and the sound was Jiang Xuan's own. "Wife," he shouted, "today, your husband is taking you home." At the same time, she activated the phoenix seal, drawing upon the immense destiny of the Great Gan and pouring it into Beiqing's body. Having appointed Beiqing as the prince regent, he was entitled to carry the empire's luck. With the protection of that destiny, the hatred of the heavenly punishment could be lessened. It was much like a secular court. If a loyal official committed a minor error, the emperor could use their past merits to reduce or cancel their punishment. To the eyes of the heavenly Dao, the destiny of the Great Gan was a form of merit earned by governing the world. Beiqing felt Nangong Mingyue's will return and was overjoyed. He immediately activated his saint-level techniques to block the dragons of lightning. With the lethal pressure removed by the Empire's luck, the two of them essentially put on a show of resistance. A storm that should have been world-shaking ended quietly, proving the old saying, "Great thunder, little rain." Meanwhile, in the Dao Holy Realm, news of the world tree seedling appearing in the Xuantian Realm spread like wildfire. It reached across the 36 domains and 33 immortal states. Countless powerhouse factions were shaken, sending experts to gather intelligence. Soon, sensational reports from Xuantian swept through the Dao Holy Realm like a hurricane. Even the two supreme powers that sat above all others, the Dao sect and the Immortal sect, were disturbed. After investigating, both took action. They wanted their share of this magnificent era. Interestingly, Wang Xiuxi was an old acquaintance of Jiang Xuan. Back when Jiang Xuan had used the name Jiang Bei to dominate the Ascending Heaven Pavilion, the head of the Wang family had visited the Jiangs to propose a marriage alliance with her. She was not an isolated case. In the Eastern God continent alone, there were 20 or 30 rising stars like her. That was actually the smallest number, considering that a month ago, Jiang Qingtian had wiped out 20 different factions. The Central God continent, being the most prosperous, naturally had the most rising stars, well over 100. Among them, one was particularly unique, the prince of the Ji family, Ji Changkong. Since the banquet at the Ascending Heaven Pavilion, where Jiang Xuan had held a sword to his throat and forced him to flee in disgrace, he had been in deep cultivation within the Ji family's ancestral lands. He had successfully mastered a powerful legacy. Now, backed by the family's vast resources, he had reached the peak of the Heaven Origin realm. He was currently traveling through the Central God continent, challenging geniuses from every side. What made him unique was the sentence he constantly repeated to everyone he met. Jiang Xuan is invincible, right? He kills practitioners of the Dao merging realm like they are nothing. But remember, when I was only in the Earth Mystic realm, I fought Jiang Xuan. My defeat was only a narrow one. Chapter 416, Nangong departs. Flowers bloomed across Xuantian as a new generation of talent sprang up like bamboo shoots after rain. Yet, many of the top prodigies who had already made their names known fell into a collective, silent retreat. Zhao Fuyao, the goddess of the Zhao family, had been in seclusion for months. She was attempting to fully merge with and absorb the power of her previous life. Her goal was to prove her Dao and reach the true God realm within 10 years. Luo Xinglan, the goddess of the desolate heaven, ignored the warnings of her cult and chose to enter isolation to master ancient secret arts. Whether she would succeed was unknown, but she would not be emerging anytime soon. After returning from the Great Gan, Emperor Ing Sihai of the Great Qin halted all outward expansion. He turned his focus toward internal recovery and rest. Ing Sihai himself departed in secret, rumored to be searching for a lost land in pursuit of something ancient. Even the Buddhist sect, which had long shouted about saving all sentient beings, went quiet. Since the golden body of the demon-subduing Arhut fled back to their sanctuary, they had retreated from the world stage. No one knew if they were plotting in the shadows or if they had truly been frightened into submission. The Buddhist son, Jiang Rulai, had always been a figure of mystery. The world only knew he had achieved the fruit of Buddhahood and mastered the supreme Buddha kingdom technique. As for his current cultivation level or true strength, it remained a complete enigma. Whenever people discussed the Buddhists, a single question inevitably arose. How would this Buddhist son compare to the other world-renowned prodigies? And more importantly, could he stand as an equal to Jiang Xuan of the eternal Jiang family? This was the primary concern for countless factions in Xuantian. Among these top geniuses, who actually had the strength to compete with Jiang Xuan? They all knew that Jiang Xuan, having obtained the Earth Emperor's legacy, was growing stronger by the second within the secret realm. Once he stepped out, Xuantian might become a stage for him alone. This was a brilliant era, a golden age that would never lack for talent, as evidenced by the sudden rise of new stars. But it was impossible to ignore the reality that while 100 flowers might bloom, Jiang Xuan stood like a massive mountain directly in their path. To the younger generation, he was the great demon king who could not be bypassed. The current situation mirrored the update of the Hidden Dragon list 6 months ago. At that time, Ming Kong of the Great Underworld sat at the top of the list. His unique heaven origin cultivation reigned supreme over the youth of Xuantian, pressing down on them until they could barely breathe. No one could have imagined that in just half a year, the world would be turned upside down. Jiang Xuan had soared to the pinnacle of Xuantian's youth. The uncrowned king of the past had fallen from his altar. The heaven origin cultivation Ming Kong once took pride in was now merely the entry ticket to being called a prodigy. Ming Kong was no longer arrogant. Even his dwindling confidence had been shattered. Under the heavenly decree that forbade God realm combat, Prince Ming Fan had launched a relentless counterattack. In just 1 month, Ming Fan had reclaimed nearly 70% of the Great Underworld Immortal Dynasty. The two true gods of the underworld race, wary of the heavenly punishment, did not dare to act. They could only help Ming Kong hold his remaining ground while they waited for the decree to end and for the full descent of their race. Xuantian appeared calm on the surface, but the undercurrents were raging. For now, the conflict was centered on the younger generation. With the heavenly punishment hanging over their heads like a sharpened blade, any expert above the god realm had no choice but to retreat to the second line and wait. Under these circumstances, the master of the Facian Pavilion seemed to have had a change of heart. Deciding to do something for the sake of Xuantian, he broke the long-standing tradition of non-interference and announced that the pavilion would open its doors to the world. On the opening day, the Longevity Tower, a place usually closed to outsiders, soared into the sky. It transformed into a massive arena 1,000 feet wide, suspended high in the air. Mysterious light surged from it, spreading in all directions. The great era has arrived, the master of the Facian Pavilion announced. The Facian Pavilion will open the gates of opportunity and offer half of our stores to assist the geniuses of the world. Starting today, any member of the younger generation may enter the Longevity Arena to test their skills. Win a single match and receive 100 great herbs. Win 3 in a row for a king herb. 5 consecutive wins earn a Dao weapon. Those with 10 wins can choose between a Dao herb or a true divine artifact. For 100 wins, the prize is a saint-level legacy and a saint weapon. If you defeat someone of a higher cultivation realm, the rewards are multiplied, doubled for 1 realm higher and tripled for 2. Furthermore, anyone who achieves 1,000 victories will receive 30% of the Facian Pavilion's total treasury. And should anyone reach 10,000 victories, the master looked out over the people of Xuantian and said calmly, the Facian Pavilion will give its entire treasury to them. From that day forward, the pavilion will support them with its full power through life and death until this era concludes. Friends, this era is brilliant, but it is filled with hardship. Only by swimming against the current and fighting for every inch of progress can you find a sliver of hope and great fortune. For most, this is the worst of times, a struggle for survival where life and death are uncertain. But for you, this is the best of times. All this uncertainty gives you infinite possibilities and an infinite future. Born into a great era, one must fight. The Facian Pavilion is willing to help you all seize longevity. Xuantian erupted in excitement. Countless geniuses and prodigies began to prepare, eager to test themselves. The Facian Pavilion had existed for tens of millions of years. How vast must its treasury be? To say they were as wealthy as a nation would be an insult. Even the Great Gan, which controlled 30% of the continent's luck, likely couldn't match their resources. After all, the master of the Facian Pavilion was the spokesperson for the heavens. The cry went out to fight. They would fight for longevity on the Longevity Arena. Geniuses gathered from all over, challenging one another with fearless hearts and the will to be invincible. The arena was never empty. Some grew stronger with every fight, racking up victories and claiming massive amounts of resources. Their names began to shine. Wang Xiuxi of the Wang family easily secured 5 wins. Her powerful combat style combined with her graceful appearance earned her a massive following, with many hailing her as a fairy. Ji Changkong also made his mark. Though people sneered at the things he said, his strength was undeniable. Within a few days, he had secured 8 wins and was pushing for his 10th. There were many such rising stars. Of course, there were even more who met with bitter defeat and left in silence, destined to be nothing more than the background for others' success. It was the best of times and the worst of times. A single general's glory is built on 10,000 rotting bones. However, the noise of Xuantian could not reach the Earth Emperor's secret realm. On the 5th day of the longevity trials, the realm welcomed a guest. Junior Bei Qing greets the Earth Emperor, Bei Qing said with a respectful bow. I have come on behalf of my disciple, Nangong Minghua, to deliver this to Jiang Xuan. He held out his hands, presenting the jade comb. The Earth Emperor looked at the item and shook his head with a sigh. So, the child has already left? Bei Qing nodded. With her current cultivation, she cannot withstand the impact of the Phoenix's memories. To prevent those memories from overriding her soul and taking control, her only choice is to increase her realm as quickly as possible. Going to the Phoenix ancestral land is her only path. That is the Phoenix's stronghold. The Earth Emperor sighed, unable to feel optimistic about her choice. Can she truly succeed there? Bei Qing lowered his eyes, his voice firm. I believe in her. There is nothing my disciple cannot achieve. I hope you are right. The Earth Emperor took the comb. Jiang Xuan is still in the middle of his meditation. It will likely take some time. I will give this to him once he emerges. Thank you, Senior, Bei Qing said. Minghua also asked me to give Jiang Xuan a message. She said, she hopes he won't forget her. The Earth Emperor shook his head and let out a wistful smile. What a beautiful couple they were. Why didn't she come herself? Does she blame this old man for not helping her? Bei Qing shook his head, his expression complicated. My disciple has a very stubborn pride. She insists on carrying everything herself. She said she didn't want their final meeting to become a burden for Jiang Xuan. Chapter 417, Jiang Zhao departs. The Earth Emperor paused, his expression softening with a hint of sorrow. This child, he thought. The more one witnesses the coldness of the world, the more one aches for those who love with such fierce intensity. Bei Qing hesitated for a moment, then cupped his hands once more. Senior, I have a personal matter I wish to ask. I hope you might provide some clarity. The Earth Emperor looked at him and smiled knowingly. You are asking about your empowerment? Bei Qing was startled. He had not expected the old man to know of it, and his reverence for the ancient figure deepened. He nodded slowly. Yes, that saint forced a breakthrough in my cultivation, raising me to the peak of the heavenly god realm. I also gained his memories and experience. However, because this power came from an external source, I find myself unable to advance further. I wish to know if there is a way to break these shackles. A peak heavenly god was formidable enough for now. But in 10 years, when the heavenly decree ended and the great era truly arrived, many would likely ascend to immortality. If his strength remained stagnant, he feared he could no longer protect his disciple. Nangong Mingyue was already in a precarious position, and her return to the Phoenix ancestral land was fraught with danger. If he remained a mere heavenly god, how could he ensure her safety? The thought of watching her suffer while remaining powerless was a burden he could hardly describe. There is no such thing as a free lunch, the Earth Emperor said calmly. To receive a saint's empowerment is both a blessing and a cage. Since you chose to accept it, you must endure the constraints it brings. Do not let greed cloud your heart. Bei Qing's heart sank. Was he truly destined never to break through again? The path was your own choice, the Earth Emperor continued, his voice tinged with a slight melancholy. There is no logic in regretting it now. You were originally blessed with great luck. Though your journey was filled with obstacles, you might have ridden the winds of this era to seek a seat of longevity on your own. Instead, you chose the shortcut. Go back now. Bei Qing's expression darkened. He realized he had been too ambitious. In this world, one cannot always have everything they desire. I was lost in my own obsession, he admitted, bowing deeply before turning to leave. The Earth Emperor watched him depart, then shifted his gaze toward the Facian Pavilion. His eyes pierced through the void, landing on the longevity arena. As he watched the young geniuses locked in fierce combat, a faint smile touched his lips. At least the master of the pavilion has decided to take some initiative, he murmured. He is not entirely unreachable. He looked down at the jade comb in his hand, his thoughts turning complicated again. When Jiang Xuan finished his meditation, how would he explain everything that had happened? How could he hand over this token without causing Jiang Xuan to resent him? It seemed he was destined to play the role of the villain. He let out a long, weary sigh. The higher one stands, the more one is bound. He felt the weight of it now more than ever, a constant need to look forward and backward, governed by necessity rather than will. I really am getting old, he thought, a sense of loneliness washing over him. It was then that another guest arrived. A middle-aged man in golden robes appeared outside the boundaries of the secret realm. He bowed respectfully. Ao Su of the True Dragon Clan seeks an audience with the Earth Emperor. The Earth Emperor narrowed his eyes in surprise. The True Dragon Clan had been secluded since ancient times, their whereabouts unknown for eons. Why would they suddenly appear in Xuantian, and why here? As he pondered this, a voice echoed from within the chaotic mists of the realm. Grandpa Earth Emperor, I was the one who asked him to come. Jiang Zhao walked out slowly. Although her aura was restrained, a shimmering golden glow pulsed around her. She radiated a visible, heart-stopping power. Even the Earth Emperor was shocked by the sheer magnitude of her growth. She had devoured and refined all 3,000 divine statues within the cave heaven. The energy contained within them was staggering. After her long sleep to digest that power, her strength had reached a terrifying level. Long before they had entered the demon den, Jiang Zhao had already unsealed 5 layers of her bloodline. Jiang Changsho had noted back then that she had reached the physical standards of an adult. Her realm had been elevated early. All she had needed was enough energy to fill the vessel. The 3,000 statues had provided more than enough. Her cultivation had now reached the level it was always meant to be upon her maturity. Thanks to the protection of the True Dragon Clan's immense luck, Jiang Zhao could hide her presence at will. It was the reason she could follow Jiang Xuan for so long without being noticed by others. Now that she was an adult, she could manipulate that luck with even greater ease. The concealment was so profound that, without using his own specialized methods, even the Earth Emperor could not see her true cultivation. It was an incredible feat. Bei Qing, who had just left, was a peak heavenly god with the experience of a saint. Yet he had been like glass before the Earth Emperor. This did not mean Jiang Zhao was necessarily stronger than Bei Qing, but rather that she had mastered the majority of the true dragon inheritance within her blood. She could now fully command the vast luck of her race. In essence, she had gained partial control over the dragon clan. The fact that she could summon a secluded dragon expert while still inside the secret realm was proof enough. However, while her body was that of an adult and her mind was filled with bloodline memories, her personality remained that of a child. Her physical appearance had changed very little, save for being a tiny bit taller. You asked him to come? The Earth Emperor asked, looking at her with genuine curiosity. Jiang Zhao nodded. I am a big girl now. I have to learn how to help Daddy with his worries. Daddy is the young king of the humans and the future human king. He carries the future of the whole race on his shoulders. It is a very heavy burden. The Earth Emperor was stunned. You know about that? MHM. Jiang Zhao nodded. My bloodline memories told me everything. I know what the humans will face in the future. The enemies of the human race are Daddy's enemies. They are very, very strong. A flash of solemnity crossed her bright eyes as if she felt a lingering fear from the memories of those ancient foes. But the look was quickly replaced by a determined grin. It must be so tiring for Daddy to carry it all by himself. I do not want him to be that tired. Now that I have the power, I want to help him. The Earth Emperor remained silent, moved by her words. Silly child, he said softly. If your father knew, he would never let you do this. Jiang Zhao blinked and giggled. That is why I have to sneak away before he finishes his meditation. If I don't go now, I won't be able to leave later. The Earth Emperor laughed helplessly. Aren't you afraid your father will be angry? Well, no. Jiang Zhao thought about it for a second and then shook her head with a smile. He loves me the most. Besides, it won't take long. I am just going back to inherit the ancestral dragon legacy and take charge of the dragon clan. She raised a small fist and spoke with immense pride. Once I bring the dragon clan back with me, let's see who dares to bully my daddy. I'll beat them all up. Chapter 418. The compliant Ao Su. Watching Jiang Zhao's antics, the Earth Emperor found himself charmed by her cuteness, a doting smile spreading across his face. However, his expression stiffened as his gaze fell back upon the jade comb in his hand. He lifted the token, his voice tinged with complexity. Your mother has left, and now you are leaving too. Your father is truly going to be a man alone. Jiang Zhao pursed her lips, her playful tone vanishing. I have been watching the situation with my first mother. In my bloodline memories, the relationship between the dragons and the phoenixes has always been close. If I go to the dragon clan, it will be easier for me to keep an eye on her. If she truly falls into danger, perhaps I can help. The Earth Emperor was stunned. He looked at the young girl, deeply moved. Emotionally, Jiang Zhao might still behave like a child, but she had truly grown up. She was doing everything in her power to protect Jiang Xuan and Nangong Minghua. Good child. The Earth Emperor reached out and patted her head. After a moment of thought, he pulled an object radiating a profound yellow light from his robe and pressed it into her chest. This item will shield you from a single fatal blow and immediately alert me to your status. If you find yourself in danger, try to buy as much time as possible. I will do my best to reach you. Jiang Zhao's heart leaped with joy. She had managed to squeeze another treasure out of him. Her eyes crinkled into sweet crescents as she gave him a beaming smile. Thank you, Grandpa Earth Emperor. Just remember to act within your limits, the Earth Emperor said with a kind smile. At this moment, he truly felt as though she were his own granddaughter. Your father is not weak, and he has us behind him. There is no need for a little one like you to push yourself so desperately. Old age often brings such tenderness, especially when faced with such a sensible child. Of course, if Jiang Changsho were present, he would have scoffed. He knew better than anyone just how mischievous this little girl could be. Before long, Jiang Zhao prepared to depart. As a final act, she left the life spirit behind, glaring at the creature with a warning look. Remember to take good care of Daddy. No slacking off. Or else humph. The life spirit's turtle-like head bobbed frantically. My little master, please rest easy. I would not dare. With a swift motion of its claws, the life spirit summoned 5 streaks of life essence and infused them into Jiang Zhao's body. These streaks have incredible healing properties. Unless you are eroded by supreme energy or killed in a... This spirit induction technique was created by an ancient saint. Its raw power is average, not much better than most saint-level legacies, but its main use is forming a contract. Once you reach the ancestral land, find someone you can trust and sign a contract with them. If you are in trouble, you can summon them to your side instantly. It is an extra layer of protection. As Ao Su watched in stunned silence, Jiang Changsho produced over a dozen life-saving treasures, the least of which was a true divine artifact. The high priest was bewildered. How could a true god from such a barren world possess so many treasures? Even for a dragon high priest, giving away this much at once would be painful. Finally, Jiang Changsho handed Jiang Zhao a storage ring. There are 20 Dao herbs in here. I am giving you almost everything I own. He looked at her with a mix of affection and mock frustration. You little brat, use them sparingly. Jiang Zhao stuck out her tongue. Thank you, Grandpa. Jiang Changsho smiled, then turned to Ao Su. His expression became stern and his voice carried a sharp warning. I expect the dragon clan to treat her well. Otherwise, when her father eventually storms your gates, do not say, I didn't warn you. Ao Su froze, find the threat almost unbelievable. Was he truly being threatened? He felt an urge to laugh. Though the dragons had been secluded for years, they remained one of the supreme races at the pinnacle of all living things. Not even the great clans at the center of the universe dared to speak to him this way, let alone a human from a backwater world. The Earth Emperor was the only exception. Just as Ao Su was about to snap back, Jiang Zhao waved her hand with a giggle. Don't worry, Grandpa. I am going back to inherit the ancestral dragon legacy. The dragon clan will have to listen to me soon anyway. Hearing this, Aosu suppressed his cold anger and remained silent. Jiang Zhao said her final goodbyes and stepped into the divine palace. Aosu lifted the structure into the air, tore through the sky, and flew out of Xuantian. Jiang Changsho watched the direction they had vanished for a long time. His expression turned lonely. Though he always complained about the little girl being a slippery rogue, her sudden departure left a void in his heart. They have all left, he muttered with a wry smile. That boy is going to have a hard time when he wakes up. He looked toward the Earth Emperor's secret realm, a trace of worry flickering in his eyes. Jiang Xuan had been in meditation for nearly 2 months. With the boy's monstrous comprehension, even a saint-level legacy usually took him only an hour or two. Could something have gone wrong? In the vast starry river outside Xuantian, Aosu revealed his true form. His dragon body stretched 10,000 feet long as he soared through the stars. The divine palace rested upon his back, shielded by a divine glow that warded off spatial storms and kept the ride smooth. Your Highness, once you inherit the ancestral dragon legacy, you can destroy the contract within your body, Aosu said coldly. That lowly human family dared to enslave you. They are seeking death. He had long noticed the bloodline contract within her. Had he not been wary of the Earth Emperor, he would have suppressed that human family on the spot. Jiang Zhao wasn't angry. She simply chuckled. That was the Jiang family. So what if it's the Jiang family? Aosu started to dismiss it, but his eyes suddenly shrank. You mean, the Jiang family of the 8 royal tribes? Who else? Aosu fell silent. A flash of dread crossed his eyes. He had not lived through the era when the 8 royal tribes were at their peak, but the ancestral records of the dragon clan were detailed. The dragons had once been no match for them. Even if the humans had declined, he did not dare to be careless. They were the royal tribes that had once hunted all other races. No one knew what terrifying foundations they still held in reserve. Aosu immediately changed his tune. Once your highness inherits the legacy, I will personally prepare grand gifts to thank the Jiang family for their dedication in protecting you. Jiang Zhao smiled. She leaned against the window of the divine palace, looking back toward Xuantian. Her eyes sparkled. Daddy, don't worry. I will bring First Mother back safely. Chapter 419. Invading Xuantian, a debt of blood. Dao Realm. Kunlun Domain. The Qin family. Qin Kongdao, the patriarch of the Qin family, had met a miserable end in the Xuantian realm. After the 2 supreme elders brought the news back, the Qin family estate was draped in white. Nearly 10,000 clan members clad in hempen mourning robes knelt before the ancestral hall, their faces etched with grief as they paid tribute to their fallen leader. Qin Hung, the patriarch's eldest son, knelt at the head of the congregation. He leaned forward, feeding paper money into the sacrificial flames for his father. Young patriarch, elders Qin Ji and Qin Tong have returned, the great elder whispered, leaning close to Qin Hung's ear. Qin Hung paused for a fraction of a second before resuming his task. Let them in, he said calmly. Yes. The great elder withdrew. Moments later, Qin Ji and Qin Tong entered with bowed heads. Without a word, they dropped to their knees and struck their foreheads against the ground 3 times before Qin Kongdo's cenotaph. They wailed with bitter tears. Patriarch, we have failed you. If we had only investigated more thoroughly, you would never have met such a disaster. Whether their grief was genuine or a performance, they wept loudly. They had been ordered to guard the perimeter of the Earth Emperor's secret realm and had not participated in the battle. By the time they realized what was happening, the patriarch was dead at the hands of the Jiang family's mysterious powerhouse, and the 2 supreme elders had been cast out of Xuantian. Terrified, they had fled the realm in a blind panic. Only after Xuantian regained its calm did they dare to sneak back and use the transport formation at the ruins of the Xuantian Qin estate to return home. With the patriarch dead, they were at fault. They hoped that by crying the loudest, they might appease the fury of the young patriarch and the supreme elders. My father underestimated the enemy, Qin Hung said, his eyes never leaving the burning paper. It was not your fault. Relief washed over Qin Ji and Qin Tong. They prostrated themselves again, voices trembling with gratitude. The young patriarch is wise and just, but I fear my father will be lonely on the road to the afterlife. Qin Hung interrupted coldly. He will need people to light his lamps and serve his tea. I shall have to trouble you both to go down and serve him. The 2 elders snapped their heads up, faces turning deathly pale. Young patriarch. A vast divine light swept through the hall. 2 heads hit the floor, and blood sprayed through the air. The great elder waved his sleeve to clear the mist of blood, then turned to the servants. Enshrine the bodies of the 2 elders. They will accompany the patriarch in his burial. Trembling with fear, the servants hurried to comply. The great elder then bowed, waiting for Qin Heng's next move. After burning the last of the paper money, Qin Hung looked up at his father's monument. Has the news that Jiang Xuan possesses the world tree seedling been spread? Replying to the young patriarch, the great elder said, everyone in the Dao Saint Realm knows. And what is the Dao sect's stance? The great elder hesitated. It is unclear. The Council of Elders only issued a command that nothing must interfere with the Dao War. Nothing must interfere with the Dao War. Qin Heng's expression darkened. The situation was worse than he thought. The Qin family was a loyal supporter of the Dao sect, governing a major domain on their behalf and acting as a primary combat force. Yet, his father had been killed, and the Dao sect had remained silent. Even now, with news of the world tree spreading, they had offered no reaction. Young Patriarch, what is our next step? The Great Elder asked. Since the Xuantian Realm forbids combat above the divine stage, various factions are mobilizing their geniuses and experts to seize the seedling. Given the momentum, should we not also move? With your strength, you could personally strike down Jiang Xuan and Nangong Manhua. It would be a small repayment for the Patriarch's death. Qin Heng frowned and looked at the Great Elder with displeasure. If that were possible, why would I have bothered spreading the news of the world tree so widely? Great Elder, you are a clever man. Such words should not come from your mouth. The Great Elder fell silent and sighed. He knew the Qin family could not move recklessly. Their patriarch had reached the peak of the god-venerable realm, yet he had been crushed like an ant by the Jiang family's powerhouse. Such an absolute gap in power meant any resistance would lead to the Qin family's total annihilation. However, not everyone could see that reality. The second prince and the branches supporting him have been inciting the clansmen, the Great Elder said helplessly. They want to march on Xuantian and avenge the patriarch. My younger brother? Qin Heng narrowed his eyes. He has finished his secluded cultivation. He emerged half a day ago, the Great Elder confirmed. It appears the second prince has achieved the great success of his innate saint body and entered the venerable realm. Huh. Qin Heng gave a cold, detached laugh. He has only been out for half a day, yet without even investigating the details, he is already eager for revenge? I suspect avenging our father is a pretense. His real goal is to force me to step down. That boy has been eyeing my position for a long time. The Great Elder remained silent. Internal competition in a great clan was always fierce. Though Qin Heng was the designated heir, his cultivation talent was merely adequate. In contrast, the second prince, Qin Su, possessed the innate saint body. On the day of his birth, a Qilin vision had appeared, bathing him in auspicious energy. He was a top-tier genius with a real chance at reaching immortality. Voices calling for Qin Su to replace Qin Heng had grown louder over the years as his cultivation soared. Most importantly, the late patriarch had always favored Qin Su and had recently hinted at making the change. If not for this sudden death, Qin Heng would likely have been ousted the moment Qin Su emerged from seclusion. Are they gathered outside the hall now, preparing to force my hand? Qin Heng asked with a light smile. The Great Elder sighed inwardly. The young patriarch truly possessed a monstrous intellect. This was why the Great Elder supported him so unconditionally. He believed that for a patriarch, wisdom was far more critical than raw power. A clan like theirs never lacked geniuses, but it lacked truly brilliant leaders. Without wisdom, how could a patriarch lead a family through the storms of the era? The Great Elder's silence was all the answer needed. Qin Heng shook his head and fed one last stack of paper money to the flames. Father, it is not that I wish to disturb your peace. It is simply that your second son is far too impatient. He stood and straightened his mourning robes. Despite the humble attire, he maintained an air of absolute composure, as if everything were under his control. Let us go out and see them. Qin Heng strode forward with the Great Elder close behind. As they stepped out of the hall, they found a massive crowd waiting. All were dressed in hempen robes, their faces flushed with rage. At the front stood Qin Kongdo's second son, Qin Su. Qin Heng scanned the crowd, his gaze finally resting on his brother. Why are you not here keeping watch over our father's soul? He demanded. Qin Su's face was dark with suppressed fury. Keep watch. I should ask you, what soul are you guarding here? Our father's remains are still in the Xuantian Realm. Until they are brought home, that is just an empty coffin. He pointed a finger at the ancestral hall and sneered. Brother, my dear elder brother. As the eldest son and the heir of the Qin family, you don't think of revenge. You just sit here by an empty box, shedding a few crocodile tears. Who are you putting on this performance for? Qin Su stepped forward, his voice rising to a shout. Qin Heng, you are a disgrace to our father. The surrounding clansmen roared in agreement, their eyes burning with indignation at Qin Heng's perceived inaction. Qin Heng remained unmoved. Even as Qin Su cursed him to his face, his expression did not flicker. He looked at his brother calmly. So, your plan is to invade Xuantian and take revenge? Exactly. Qin Su snapped. Xuantian is a barren wasteland. The Jiang family and the Great Gan Empire are nothing. They dared to kill my father and insult our name. They deserve nothing but death. If you don't have the courage, brother, then I will do it myself. I will lead our warriors to slaughter the Jiangs and the Great Gan until not a single soul remains. I will use their blood to appease our father's spirit. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. The factions supporting Qin Su immediately took up the cry. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. The emotions of the crowd boiled over as they raised their fists in unison. Clap, clap, clap. Qin Heng smiled and began to applaud. The rhythmic sound cut through the shouting, drawing everyone's angry focus back to him. It is heartening to see so many hot-blooded young men in our family, Qin Hung said, his tone full of mock praise. If my father can see us from the heavens, he must be very proud. Qin Su and the others were caught off guard. What was he playing at? But Qin Hung's next words sent a shockwave through the crowd. Supreme Elder, please settle this. Take every single one of them and send them down to keep my father company. He spoke the words casually, with a coldness that made the heart tremble. In his eyes, these were not kinsmen of the same blood. They were merely cattle to be slaughtered at his whim. Chapter 420. My father's actions were driven by greed. The Supreme Elder moved. With a single sweep of his sleeve, he unleashed a slaughter. It was cold and absolute. Even the second prince, Qin Su, met his end without a moment of hesitation from the elder. In an instant, the ground before the ancestral hall was littered with over 1,000 corpses, and blood flowed in thick, dark rivers. The Supreme Elder shook the crimson stains from his robes. He cast a freezing gaze over the trembling clansmen who remained. The patriarch has fallen, he barked. The authority of the Qin family now rests solely with the young patriarch. If any among you still harbor dissent, look upon these bodies. This is your only warning. The clansmen turned pale. They bowed their heads in unison, their voices shaking as they replied. We understand. The Supreme Elder turned toward Qin Hung. He looked as if he wanted to speak, but held back. Qin Hung caught the look and gave a firm nod. Rest easy, Elder. I will handle the rest. The Supreme Elder sighed. It was a long, heavy sound filled with a sudden, weary loneliness. Without another word, he took to the sky and returned to the ancestral lands. The recent events in the Xuantian Realm had shattered his spirit. The absolute, effortless suppression he had witnessed left him in total despair. Even now, the memory of that mysterious powerhouse made his heart shudder. Revenge? How could they even dream of it? Even if the Qin family exhausted every hidden trump card and sacrificed every life they had, they likely wouldn't be worth the effort of that being's single finger. Their ancestors had spent millions of years and endured countless trials to build this foundation. Who would be brave enough to throw it all away for a grudge? At least, he lacked that courage. Revenge was impossible. No matter how deep the hatred burned, they had to swallow it, hide it, and never let a trace of it show. After all, no one knew if that mysterious man from the Jiang family intended to pull the weeds out by the roots. In this new reality, Qin Hung was the obvious choice to lead. He was rational and cold. The family was safest in his hands, even if it meant losing a genius like Qin Su. It couldn't be helped. Qin Su had been too impatient. He had tried to use their father's death to seize power. He had underestimated the terror of the Longevity Jiang family and overestimated his own worth. Qin Hung scanned the carnage, his eyes lingering on his brother's corpse. A cold smirk touched his lips. Little brother, you were far too young. There are many problems in this world that talent and raw power simply cannot solve. Collect the bodies, Qin Hung ordered the servants. Bury them with my father. And clean this place. I want every drop of blood gone. The servants, fighting back their tremors, hurried to obey. Qin Hung then addressed the remaining clan. From this day forward, the Qin family is sealing its gates. We are withdrawing from the world. No member of this clan is to set foot outside our borders without my express permission. Anyone who defies this order will be executed on the spot. The crowd shivered. We obey the young patriarch's command. Furthermore, prepare grand gifts, Qin Hung added calmly. We will be traveling to the Jiang family to offer our formal apologies. Mark my words well. The Qin family has no grievance with the Longevity Jiang family. Everything that happened previously was the work of my father alone, driven by his own personal greed. It had nothing to do with this clan. A wave of shock and muffled anger rippled through the survivors. Their patriarch was dead, and now they had to go and apologize? Where was the logic in that? But looking at the pile of corpses being dragged away, no one dared to argue. They suppressed their fury and prepared to follow orders. Great Elder, take half of our total resources to the Dao sect, Qin Hung continued. Inform them that the Qin family has suffered a catastrophic internal crisis and is no longer capable of fighting in the Dao War. Ask them to show us mercy and withhold punishment. The Great Elder gasped. Half of our resources? Is that not too much? Is it? Qin Heng's eyes grew deep and dark. Compared to the million-year legacy of our family, what is a mere half of our storage? One of the four great families of the Dao sect, the Nangong family, originated from the Great Gan. This was a detail Qin Hung could not ignore. If his father and the three heavenly gods were still alive, they could have fought in the war, won glory, and perhaps elevated the clan to the status of an aristocratic family. They wouldn't have feared the Nangong family then, but they had lost that chance. They were now vulnerable. If the Nangong family decided to sabotage them, the Qin family would be finished. When you lose, you pay the price. Half of their wealth was a small fee for survival. By proactively showing their sincerity to the Dao sect, they were essentially buying the sect's protection. Even the Nangong family wouldn't dare to move against them openly if it meant disrespecting the Dao sect's decision to shield them. The Great Elder thought it over and nodded slowly. Just then, a magnificent voice boomed from high above. Huh. It seems there is at least one intelligent man left in this family. A middle-aged man in purple robes descended from the clouds, standing atop a shimmering, immortal sword. He had sliced right through the Qin family's protective array as if it were nothing, coming to a halt directly above the ancestral hall. Behind him on the sword stood two young prodigies. They wore pure white Taoist robes with identity tokens carved from divine jade hanging at their waists. The jade bore a single name, Nangong. The Nangong family. The Qin clansmen shifted, their faces hardening with defensive hostility. The great elder stepped in front of Qin Hung, shielding him from any potential strike. Qin Hung reached out and gently moved the great elder aside. He stepped forward and looked the purple-robed man in the eye. His expression was calm, showing neither fear nor arrogance. To walk upon the azure cloud sword is to step among the heavens. I did not realize the azure cloud sword immortal of the Nangong family was visiting. Please forgive our lack of a proper welcome. The sword immortal narrowed his eyes, studying Qin Heng. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. The rumors said the heir of the Qin family was a disappointment, a dog born to a tiger, far inferior to the saint-bodied Qin Su. But today, the man before him was a surprise. I am glad to see the Qin family still has someone as bright as you, the sword immortal said. In the Xuantian Realm, neither the Great Gan nor the Jiang family are enemies you can afford to provoke. As long as your family remains this humble and obedient, the Nangong family will not trouble you. Qin Hung felt a wave of relief wash through his chest. He bowed deeply. Thank you for your guidance, senior. To be honest, we have already decided to seal our mountains. The conflicts of Xuantian and the Dao Saint Realm no longer concern us. Good, the sword immortal replied, nodding in approval. Then, he turned his sword and vanished into the sky. Qin Hung watched the horizon for a long time. Only after the man was long gone did he exhale a long, ragged breath. He looked at the great elder. This disaster, it has finally passed for our family. His voice was noticeably lighter. The great elder was deep in thought, but a part of him still felt a lingering sting of humiliation. Young patriarch, he whispered, do we truly have to live like cowards hiding in a shell forever? Qin Hung glanced at him and gave a helpless smile. You saw the test I ran, didn't you? Even the news of a world tree seedling wasn't enough to make the Dao sect move against the Jiangs. If they won't act, what can we do? He turned and walked back into the hall to resume his vigil for his father. Only a soft, chilling sentence drifted back to the great elder's ears. When the world learns to look down on us, when they finally forget the Qin family exists, that is when we can truly act without restraint. Chapter 4:21. The Grand Dao Lord is surnamed Jiang. Ancestor, the Xuantian Realm has long since fallen, and that Great Gan Empire is of no use to us. It will eventually be absorbed into a branch of our Nangong clan anyway. Why did you have to come here in person? Nangong Hachong, a young genius standing behind the azure cloud sword immortal, asked in confusion. The immortal sword slowed to a halt. What right do you have to speak? The sword immortal roared. You dare criticize the ancestral line. I advise you to chew those ridiculous thoughts up and swallow them. If I hear another word like that from your mouth, I will skin you alive myself. Do not think your back has grown stiff just because your grandfather recently broke through to the heavenly god realm. Believe me, even if I executed you right in front of him, he wouldn't dare utter a sound. Remember this, the ancestral line is the ancestral line. No matter how much power our clan wields in the Dao Saint Realm, we are still a branch that walked out of Xuantian. Nangong Hachong clutched his swollen mouth, trembling. He lowered his head, not daring to talk back. Beside him, Nangong Hugwan was equally terrified by the ancestors' fury. Listen well, both of you. You are being sent to Xuantian to assist the Great Gan and the Longevity Jiang family. You are there to block the geniuses of the Dao Saint Realm. If you harbor any hidden agendas or fail to show sufficient respect to the Great Gan ancestors, I will throw you into the spirit mines to dig for the rest of your lives. Understood. The two replied hurriedly. The azure cloud sword immortal nodded, finally suppressing his anger and a lingering trace of fear. His clan was different from others. Their ancestral tripod held absolute authority. Whoever held the tripod was the head of the ancestral line, and that was not to be questioned. One could be stripped of their bloodline and exiled, or worse, have their soul extinguished entirely. Furthermore, they had received word that the current empress of Great Gan, Nangong Mingyue, had already been recognized by the ancestral tripod. In other words, she was the true person in power for the entire Nangong bloodline, including their great clan in the Dao Saint Realm. And Jiang Xuan, the one possessing the world tree seedling, was her fiancé. The path the Nangong clan needed to take was clear. But there was another, even more critical reason. The sword immortal's eyes flickered with gravity. That Longevity Jiang family in Xuantian was absolutely not to be provoked. A few days ago, he had visited the sword sect to debate the blade with a certain sword-obsessed friend. After their match, they had shared wine and conversation. While drunk, his friend had let slip a startling secret. Azure Cloud, do you know the background of the Grand Dao Lord, the leader of your Dao sect? I do not. I know a little. That Grand Dao Lord, his surname is Jiang. It was common knowledge that the Dao sect was managed by a council of elders, but above them sat 3 Dao lords who held the true power. These 3 were beings far beyond the god realm who had long since vanished to travel the cosmos, rarely interfering in internal affairs. The Sword Immortal had to stay alert. The Grand Dao Lord was surnamed Jiang. His friend wouldn't have revealed this at any other time. To tell him this, just as news from the Xuantian Realm was sweeping through the Dao Saint Realm, he had to make the connection. Even if it seemed incredible, if there was even a 1 in 10,000 chance that the Dao Lord was linked to the Longevity Jiang family, he had to maintain total reverence. If he couldn't win their favor, he certainly couldn't afford to make them an enemy. Suppressing his racing thoughts, the Azure Cloud Sword Immortal sped toward Thousand World City, located at the boundary between the Dao and Immortal Sect territories. Several star systems lay between the Dao Saint Realm and Xuantian. The distance was so vast that even a saint could hardly cross it without using a stable spatial tunnel. While God Realm experts could bridge the gap with supreme treasures, the pressure of a temporary tunnel was too great for anyone below the God Realm to survive. To send the 2 youths, they had to go through Thousand World City. Thousand World City existed in its own domain, a neutral third party outside the influence of the Dao and Immortal sects. While the 2 major alliances fought for territory and destiny, a few neutral powers remained, led by beings beyond the God Realm. Within the city, countless geniuses and experts from various powerhouse factions had already gathered. They were eager for the spatial tunnel to open so they could seize the World Tree seedling. Because of the long-standing blood feuds between the Dao and Immortal sects, the crowd was split into 2 hostile camps. If not for the rules of the city lord, they would have already started a massacre. The Azure Cloud Sword Immortal landed and took up residence in a courtyard owned by the Nangong clan. Countless gazes shifted toward him. It has been years, and the Azure Cloud Sword Immortal remains as striking as ever. A god-venerable expert in martial robes called out from a distance. This was the sect master of the Limitless Gate, ruler of the Singing Bird domain, and a subordinate of the Dao sect. His sect's strength was slightly inferior to what the Qin family had been before their patriarch fell. He had brought 3 geniuses with him, hoping the World Tree would allow his sect to rise to the top tier of power. 5 other god venerables also approached to pay their respects. As a member of the elite Nangong clan, the Sword Immortal status was far above theirs, even if their cultivation levels were similar. As for the Immortal sect, they had mobilized even more heavily. Of the 33 immortal provinces, nearly half of the ruling factions had sent representatives. They were all lured by the bounty of Immortal Lord Minghong, seeking to hunt the Xuantian geniuses and take the World Tree for themselves. Nearly 20 god venerables from the Immortal sect watched the Sword Immortal with suspicion. They hadn't expected the Nangong clan to interfere while the Dao sect Council of Elders remained silent. Did this mean the Dao sect officially wanted the World Tree? The Azure Cloud Sword Immortal ignored them all and waited quietly. 2 hours later, a Thousand World City deacon stepped forward. Using spatial stones, he activated the coordinates for Xuantian. A gray divine light shot upward, piercing through the void and opening a hazy, vast spatial corridor within the deep darkness. The geniuses of every faction tensed, ready to be the first to step through. The god venerables gave their final instructions, emphasizing that the World Tree was a chance that appeared only once in an eternity. But at the exact moment the corridor solidified, the heavens shook with a thunderous boom. From the far distance, a Dao talisman streaked across the sky and slammed into the firmament. It glowed with brilliant light, manifesting a towering, hazy figure. An overwhelming, supreme aura flooded Thousand World City, crushing the spirits of all present. The massive figure looked down upon the city, its gaze landing on the deacon. A voice like rolling thunder filled the air. By the decree of the Dao sect, Thousand World City is to close the spatial tunnel to the Xuantian Realm immediately. No person from the Dao Saint Realm is permitted to travel there. Any defiance will be viewed as a direct provocation against the Dao sect. Chapter 422. The Xuantian Realm is about to get lively. The crowd was stunned. What was the meaning of this? The Dao sect had remained silent for so long, only to issue an official decree at the exact moment the spatial tunnel opened. It was a move designed to frustrate and humiliate. For the regional powerhouses like the Limitless Gate who were under the Dao sect's jurisdiction, their faces turned pale. Fear crept into their hearts. The Council of Elders were known for their calculated cruelty. No one knew their true motives, but one thing was certain. Everyone present had likely just been added to the Council's list of the disfavored. With the Dao War looming, their chances of being used as cannon fodder had just increased significantly. On the other side, the members of the Immortal sect simply sneered. A provocation against the Dao sect? Over the years, the friction and bloody battles between their alliances had been far more severe than a mere insult. The Dao sect's laws held no weight with them. Without hesitation, the geniuses of the Immortal sect stepped forward, ready to enter the spatial corridor. The tunnel suddenly snapped shut. The crowd froze. Angry glares shifted toward the Thousand World City deacon. What is the meaning of this? One demanded. The deacon was equally bewildered. He hadn't done it. Thousand World City existed outside the grasp of both sects. They had no reason to obey the Dao sect's sudden decree. Suddenly, a vast, ethereal radiance rose from the city lord's manor. The lord of Thousand World City, dressed in his profound mystic robes, stepped into the sky. He looked at the hazy figure projected by the Dao talisman with visible surprise. That person was known to be elusive, rarely even interfering in the Dao sect's internal affairs. Why would he appear today to personally block these young geniuses from reaching Xuantian? The city lord turned toward the immortal sect camp and spoke calmly. Immortal Lord Minghong, come out and give us an explanation. My Thousand World City is a small temple. I have no desire to be caught in the crossfire between your two great powers. As the words fell, a beam of celestial light erupted from the immortal sect's side. It pierced the void and projected an image of a man with an air of transcendent divinity. It was the master of the immortal sect himself, Immortal Lord Minghong. Minghong nodded to the city lord before turning his gaze toward the hazy figure. His eyes flickered with cold disdain. What is the Dao sect playing at? He mocked. You act all high and mighty, pretending you don't want a seat at the table, yet you try to stop everyone else from eating? The azure cloud soared immortal, and the other god venerables felt their hearts hammer against their ribs. They finally realized the identity of that hazy figure. It was one of the Dao lords of the Dao sect. But which of the three, it was remained a mystery. Unlike Immortal Lord Minghong, who ruled his sect with an iron fist, the three Dao lords were spectral figures. They almost never interfered in internal politics and rarely showed their faces. It was entirely possible that many disciples didn't even know they existed above the Council of Elders. However, as the azure cloud sword immortal looked at the hazy projection, he felt he already knew the answer. A wave of lingering fear washed over him. The hazy figure looked at Minghong and replied indifferently. Suppose I am stopping you. Suppose I am not. What of it? If you are unsatisfied, we can always move to a total war. Minghong's face darkened. The air around him grew frigid. The projection ignored his anger and turned back to the city lord. Without my permission, the spatial tunnel to the Xuantian realm stays closed. It might be difficult for my Dao sect to wipe out the immortal sect entirely, but crushing your Thousand World City would be no trouble at all. The city lord's expression soured. Is that a threat against my city? The figure chuckled. Don't doubt it. It is absolutely a threat. Fury flickered in the city lord's eyes. My city has never interfered in your disputes. Is the Dao sect not taking this a step too far? Is it? The figure shrugged. If you say so. He turned his attention back to Minghong and smiled thinly. Give me a straight answer. Do you want a total war or not? If you are afraid, then crawl back home and wait for the Dao War to begin. Don't worry, the Dao sect will be there to play with you. The entire area fell into a deathly silence. While Minghong stood there with a face like a storm cloud, radiating killing intent, the god venerables and the young geniuses were trembling with shock. This was madness. They had never seen a Dao Lord in person, and they had imagined them to be either sage-like scholars or tyrannical emperors. They never expected such a wild, unrestrained, and arrogant personality. This felt less like a supreme leader and more like a reckless heir of some nouveau riche clan. The contrast was jarring. Minghong stared at the figure, his urge to strike almost overwhelming his restraint. But he had reached his position through logic and calculation. He would not let a moment of temper ruin his grand design. Attacking now would bring zero benefit. He needed that world tree seedling. With it, he could break through his current limits, crush the Dao sect, and unify the entire Dao Saint realm. He would not abandon that goal over a few insults. Furthermore, Jiang Xuan and Nangong Manhua had to be eliminated before they had time to grow. According to the intelligence provided by them, both were linked to the missing human emperor of the ancient immortal court. Jiang Xuan had even allegedly gained the recognition of the human wills, earning the title of Young King. If that boy was allowed to mature, he would become a massive threat to the immortal sect and the immortal race behind them. Besides, this sudden pressure for total war felt like a trap. Minghong didn't believe this was a mere whim. His anger cooled into a sharp, icy focus. I haven't seen you for 5 million years, he said with a cold laugh. Back then, you were cautious and small. To see you this arrogant today is truly an eye-opening experience. The figure smiled. Whether I am being arrogant is something you can find out by testing me. Minghong did not take the bait. Instead, he shifted the topic. No matter how mad you are, you would never dare defy the will of the heavenly Dao. The hazy figure looked at him deeply. He seemed to guess what was coming, but remained silent. The Dao War between our sects stems from the 5 slots granted by the heavenly Dao, Minghong said calmly. This process is recognized by the heavens and cannot be bypassed. During the last cycle, the Dao sect chose the location for the first battle. This time, it is the immortal sect's turn. Minghong smiled. You know exactly where I will set the stage. Tell me, do you have the courage to defy the heavens themselves? The figure laughed. Where else could it be? The Xuantian Realm. The first battle of the Dao War was reserved for the younger generation under 300 years of age. It was a level of combat that wouldn't be heavily suppressed by Xuantian's divine-level ban on violence. By using the rules of the Dao War and the pressure of the heavenly Dao, Ming Hong had found a way through. He has a brain after all, the figure thought to himself. Just not a very big one. I have done everything I can, the figure mused privately. Whether you can seize the opportunity is up to you. The slots for the Dao War were granted by the heavenly Dao of the Dao Saint Realm. They contained the essence needed to reach sainthood. Usually, the two sects fought until the world bled for these slots. Under normal circumstances, there was no way anyone from the Xuantian Realm would ever get a chance at one. I seem to have underestimated you, the figure said aloud. He feigned a look of deep fury, turned his back, and vanished. Seeing his opponent forced to back down, Ming Hong smiled with triumph. He turned to the city lord. Proceed as planned. The city lord nodded and waved his sleeve, reopening the spatial corridor. Ming Hong then looked at the assembled geniuses of the immortal sect. You heard the news. The Dao War has moved up, and the first battle is set in the Xuantian Realm. Your mission is no longer just to find the seedling. You are to slaughter every Dao sect disciple you find. Win this first battle and claim the first slot for our sect. The young immortals bowed low. We obey the immortal lord's command. They surged into the tunnel, disappearing toward Xuantian. The members of the Dao sect factions were left in a daze. The Dao War was starting now. Before they could even decide their next move, the Dao sect communication talismans began to glow. A new decree arrived. All factions belonging to the Dao sect are to send their geniuses below the God realm to Xuantian. Participate in the first battle, wipe out the immortal sect, and bring back the first slot. The Azure Cloud Sword Immortal shook his head helplessly. He turned to Nangong Hachong and Nangong Haguan. You understand the situation. Go to Xuantian immediately. But remember this. If you have the strength to spare, you must protect Jiang Xuan and Nangong Minghua at all costs. The two youths shared a look and nodded solemnly. Understood. They stepped into the tunnel. The other factions followed suit, and those who hadn't even arrived yet were now racing toward Thousand World City. No one had expected the war to ignite so suddenly. One thing was certain. The Xuantian Realm was about to become the center of a very violent storm. Chapter 4:23. The Immortal Sect Descends. Xuantian Realm. Pavilion Pavilion, Longevity Platform. The martial arts demonstrations among the Xuantian geniuses continued. More and more figures were beginning to distinguish themselves, securing consecutive victories and claiming increasingly generous rewards from the Pavilion Pavilion. Some had even begun their charge toward the 100-victory milestone. A sudden boom echoed across the stage. Lu Xuanji held a jade fan, sweeping it toward the sky. His Dao domain expanded, scattering laws like starlight that crushed his opponent's divine abilities and hurled them off the longevity platform. I accept your surrender, Lu Xuanji said calmly. Lu Xuanji, 100 victories. The voice of the Pavilion Pavilion Master rang out from the void. You are rewarded with 1 saint-level inheritance and 1 saint weapon. The inheritance and the weapon flew forward, hovering before Lu Xuanji while radiating a supreme aura. The surrounding crowd watched with a mixture of admiration, envy, and jealousy. Lu Xuanji actually achieved 100 wins. His strength is terrifying. Is he truly rising to the top after rebuilding his foundation? I wonder if his current strength is enough to defeat Jiang Xuan? Discussions broke out everywhere. Lu Xuanji's sudden rise on the longevity platform had prompted everyone to investigate his background. He was the Dao seed of the Tai Dao sect and a prominent figure on the previous Hidden Dragon list. However, when the new list was released, he had been completely overshadowed by Jiang Xuan, who was actually Jiang Xuan in disguise. His Dao heart had been shattered, leaving him in a state of depression until the arrival of the Tai Dao sect from the Dao Saint Realm. Under the guidance of a true god and the pouring of massive resources, he had rebuilt his spirit and reached the half-step Dao integration realm. To many, Lu Xuanji was now a model of perseverance. They were eager to see if he could finally defeat Jiang Xuan and shatter the inner demons that had haunted him for so long. Lu Xuanji accepted his rewards and scanned the crowd. Jiang Xuan, I am waiting for you to fight. He had repeated these words after every single victory. He was waiting for Jiang Xuan to emerge from seclusion so he could defeat him fairly and end his nightmares. In that moment, the sky above Xuantian shattered like a mirror. A hazy spatial corridor extended from the deep darkness. The geniuses of the immortal sect had arrived. While the local cultivators watched in shock, the invaders stepped out of the corridor. They looked down upon the scene with arrogance, quickly confirming their location based on their intelligence. They descended toward the longevity platform. Their leader glanced at Lu Xuanji and immediately dismissed him. The boy hadn't even reached the Dao integration realm. He was trash in their eyes. The leader waved a hand dismissively. Clean this up. A figure blurred forward from his side, charging at Lu Xuanji. Immortal light surged around the attacker, his power shaking the very fabric of space. Lu Xuanji's expression changed. He snapped open his jade fan and swept it upward, summoning starlight laws to block the strike. A series of thunderous explosions followed. The attacker's strength was far superior. The surging immortal light shattered the starlight laws instantly, breaking Lu Xuanji's divine ability in a single breath. The attacker closed the distance and delivered a horizontal kick. With a dull thud, Lu Xuanji was sent flying off the longevity platform by the sheer force of the impact. Silence fell over the area. The Xuantian geniuses were paralyzed with shock. Lu Xuanji, who had just secured 100 victories, had been defeated in a single move. Who were these people? How could they be this powerful? The leader of the newcomers took in their expressions and nodded with satisfaction. My apologies, he said smoothly. The Immortal Sect is requisitioning this longevity platform. You may continue your little martial arts display once we have finished our business. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Xuantian, an inner disciple of the Immortal Sect at the peak of the Dao Integration Realm. Xuantian scanned the crowd with a look of playful contempt. You are welcome to resist, of course. However, I cannot guarantee your survival. You are all simply too weak. The crowd stared at him with burning anger, yet the fear kept them frozen. A peak Dao integration expert was merely an inner disciple? Where did this immortal sect come from? Even the top geniuses of the Longevity Jiang family and the Great Gan Empire had not yet stepped into the Dao integration realm. Xuantian turned his gaze back toward the fallen Lu Xuanji and beckoned him. You, come here. Lu Xuanji's face was grim, and he did not move. He would not respond to such a humiliating gesture. Now, don't be difficult, Xuantian said. His smile turned cold as he reached out. The power of the great Dao surged, forming a massive unseen hand that snatched Lu Xuanji out of the air as if he were a common insect. Lu Xuanji struggled desperately, unleashing every technique he knew, but they were useless against the overwhelming pressure. To the horror of the onlookers, their celebrated champion was dangled like a helpless chick as Xuantian hauled him back onto the platform. Lu Xuanji felt his spirit breaking. His newly mended Dao heart began to crack once more. He had believed that reaching the half-step Dao integration realm made him invincible among his peers. He thought that by defeating Jiang Xuan, his path to greatness would be clear. But reality had dealt him a crushing blow. Despite becoming infinitely stronger, he was still powerless against this newcomer. Is the immortal sect of the Dao Saint realm truly this powerful? Lu Xuanji felt his hope dying. Through the Tai Dao sect, he knew that the geniuses of the upper realm were generally stronger, but he never imagined the gap would be this vast. They weren't even in the same league. Xuantian held Lu Xuanji and offered a faint, tempting smile. Do you want to join the immortal sect and become as powerful as I am? I can give you that chance. Your ability to stand out among this crowd shows you have talent. You simply lack the right platform. Were these disciples of the immortal sect here specifically for Jiang Xuan? Questions raced through the minds of the local geniuses. Was Jiang Xuan truly that famous? Even more concerning, if he did step forward, would he even stand a chance against these invaders? Human nature is instinctively protective of its own. Though many of these cultivators were Jiang Xuan's rivals and dreamed of surpassing him, they were all children of the Xuantian realm. Facing these arrogant outsiders, they felt a sudden, collective surge of defiance. No one wanted to watch foreigners run wild on their home soil. Even Lu Xuanji, who viewed Jiang Xuan as his greatest inner demon, felt this shift. For a fleeting second, he had been tempted. He had hoped these disciples would crush Jiang Xuan for him and longed for the power the immortal sect offered. But fear took hold. He was a part of Xuantian. If he surrendered in front of everyone and became Xuantian's lackey, he would be loathed forever. Being a traitor and a disgrace was far worse than his own personal failure. He chose to fight. Lu Xuanji summoned his saint weapon. Though he hadn't refined it and could barely tap into its potential, the power of a saint was his only hope to break Xuantian's binding. A saint weapon? Xuantian's eyes widened in shock. How could a barren place like Xuantian possess such a treasure? Despite being an inner disciple of the prestigious immortal sect, he only carried a true god weapon, and even that was a special gift from his master for this mission. Resources in the Dao Saint realm were vast, but the competition was brutal. Only the elite held the best prizes. This little Xuantian realm is pathetic, but its pockets are deep, Xuantian thought, his heart racing with greed. A smile spread across his face. Such a weapon is wasted on you. Only in my hands can it reach its true potential. The power of the great Dao surged behind him, manifesting as the massive silhouette of a celestial beast. As Xuantian reached out, the beast extended a claw as large as a mountain, heavy with lethal intent. The chill of death filled the air. Lu Xuanji turned pale. The gap in their strength was simply too vast. His saint weapon was powerful, but without refinement, it couldn't bridge the distance between them. Was this the end? Was his hard-won prize going to become someone else's loot? His world turned gray. Why was his life so miserable? Suddenly, a vast radiance swept across the stage, dissolving Xuantian's attack instantly. The master of the Phaeacian Pavilion appeared in the sky, looking down at the immortal sect disciples with suppressed fury. He had just started trying to do something meaningful for Xuantian, and now these troublemakers had arrived. He had emptied the pavilion's treasury to help these geniuses grow, and it had worked. He had just produced a 100-victory champion. Achieving 100 wins was no small feat. Lu Xuanji had tempered himself into gold through battle and was finally on the path to true power. The Pavilion Master had intended to nurture him as a pillar of Xuantian's future. After all, Jiang Xuan was a freak of nature. You couldn't compare anyone to him. But now, these brats from the immortal sect had arrived and shattered Lu Xuanji's Dao heart yet again. This is Xuantian, not your immortal sect, the Pavilion Master shouted. Behave yourselves. He didn't care to argue with juniors. He turned his gaze toward the spatial corridor and spoke coldly. I have no obligation to discipline your disciples, nor do I care why you are here. But while you are in Xuantian, you will follow Xuantian's rules. Otherwise, I will be the one sending your bodies home. Perhaps the scolding he had received from Manhua previously had finally woken him up, because he was standing much taller now. Immortal Lord Minghong, whose projection still lingered at Thousand World City, heard this through the corridor. His face darkened. A mere gatekeeper for a small realm's heavenly Dao dared to bark at him? Do you seek death? Minghong asked. A terrifying, supreme pressure crossed the corridor, weighing down on the Xuantian realm. Everyone below trembled, gripped by an instinctive fear. It was an absolute suppression of their very existence. Their lives felt like they hung on a single thought from this distant lord. The Pavilion Master remained unmoved. He summoned the power of the heavenly Dao, and the lightning of the heavens surged, instantly crushing the intruder's pressure. He looked directly through the corridor at Minghong and snorted. You are welcome to try. The heavenly Dao. Minghong narrowed his eyes. He grew cautious, and his expression turned sour. As a lord, he didn't care about the man himself. He could crush him like an ant. But he could not ignore the heavenly Dao backing him. Even the will of a small world held a power he could not easily oppose. Furthermore, for the sake of the mission, he couldn't afford a direct confrontation right now. For the World Tree and the Dao War, he had to yield. Very well, Minghong said, his voice dripping with forced laughter. Forget your grand rules. Let's get straight to the point. What will it take for you to stay out of my disciples' way? The Pavilion Master's eyes flickered. He realized Minghong was desperate enough to compromise. It had to be for the World Tree seedling in Jiang Xuan's possession. He couldn't think of anything else that would make the lord of the immortal sect bow his head. In that case, I can use this to my advantage, the Pavilion Master thought. He looked back at Minghong and smiled. The Longevity platform. I don't care about your schemes, but those from the Dao Saint realm are forbidden from using force anywhere except on the Longevity platform. If anyone breaks this rule, do not blame me when the heavenly tribulation strikes them down. What kind of rule is that? Xuantian and his fellow disciples were baffled. If they couldn't fight outside the platform, how were they supposed to hunt geniuses and secure the World Tree? Minghong, however, saw through the plan immediately. He laughed coldly. You want to use my disciples to train your own soldiers? You have a lot of nerve. The Pavilion Master didn't deny it. Yes, it was for training. The Great Era was coming, and while Xuantian's youth were improving, they were still too weak. Lu Xuanji's instant defeat proved that. Since he couldn't drive the immortal sect away, he would turn them into a target, a group of powerful enemies to force Xuantian's geniuses to grow faster. He believed in the potential of his people. Is the great immortal sect actually afraid? The Pavilion Master taunted. Minghong chuckled. As you wish. He turned to his disciples. The bounty is still in effect. I have only one requirement. Anyone who steps onto that platform must die. The disciples felt a chill and bowed. We obey. Minghong's projection vanished. On the stage, Xuantian pointed to the weakest member of his group. You, hold the stage. Take them on one by one. Understood, Yuan replied, stepping forward and releasing the aura of a peak Tianyuan realm cultivator. Xuantian looked at the surrounding local geniuses with a sneer. Without saying a word, he waved his hand, using the power of the great Dao to write 5 blood-red characters in the air. Xuantian has no geniuses. Chapter 425. Where's my wife? The words Xuantian has no geniuses rippled through the crowd, sparking a wave of fury. To the local cultivators, this was not just an insult. It was a blatant declaration that they were all useless. This is too much. One genius roared, his voice trembling with rage. Our Xuantian land will not tolerate the insolence of your immortal sect. He lunged onto the Longevity platform, unleashing the energy of a late-stage Tianyuan realm cultivator. Waves of power radiated from him as he pointed his blade directly at Yuan. I am Wang Minggong of the Tai Holy Land, 8th level of the Tianyuan realm. While he was not as renowned as Lu Xuanji, his cultivation level had earned him 10 consecutive victories. He possessed the rare ability to fight those above his own rank. He knew he was no match for the peak Dao integration expert Xuantian, but against Yuan, who was only at the peak of the Tianyuan realm, he believed he had a fighting chance. But before he could strike, Yuan blurred into a residual image. A series of thunderous booms echoed, followed by the sickening spray of blood and flesh. Wang Minggong had no chance to resist. He was pulverized instantly. Too many words. No wonder you are trash, Yuan muttered, shaking the blood from his knuckles. He turned his gaze back to the crowd outside the platform and said calmly, next. Silence fell over the spectators. Lu Xuanji's defeat could be explained away by a massive gap in cultivation, but Wang Minggong had been close to his opponent in rank. To be crushed so effortlessly sent a chill through the crowd. Was the immortal sect truly this invincible? After a long pause, another challenger stepped forward. I will fight. This genius had secured 20 consecutive wins and sat at the peak of the Tianyuan realm. The confrontation lasted only a few breaths. With a dull thud and another splash of crimson, the battle ended. Yuan chuckled. Is there nothing but trash here? Where are the real geniuses of Xuantian? I heard of someone named Jiang Xuan who was supposed to be powerful. Where is he? Another heavy silence followed, but beneath it, the fury of the crowd was becoming a violent storm. No one could endure being called worthless to their face. One by one, more cultivators stepped onto the platform. The results did not change. They fell, one after another, at Yuan's feet. They gave their lives for their honor and the honor of Xuantian. The master of the Faxian Pavilion watched from the shadows, his eyes twitching with pity. Yet, he did not intervene. He simply let his figure fade away. To compete in the Great Era, one had to be tempered by blood and fire. This confrontation was merely a premature look at the cruelty of the coming age. Across the realm, every major sect was watching. As they saw their rising stars fall to the immortal sect, their collective anger reached a boiling point. The claim that Xuantian had no geniuses was a stain no one could tolerate. Is the entirety of Xuantian made of waste? Yuan asked after slaying yet another opponent. Where is Jiang Xuan? Tell him to crawl out. Why would Jiang Xuan waste his time on you? A voice thundered from the direction of the Great Gan Empire. Nangong Fengtian soared into the sky, gripping his heaven-painting halberd. He transformed into the image of a horned dragon, tearing through the void. He landed heavily on the Longevity platform, pointing his weapon at Yuan. The one who will slay you is Nangong Fengtian of the Great Gan. He gripped the halberd with both hands, swinging it down with 10,000 tons of force. The phantom of the dragon roared, sending shockwaves in all directions. It is Nangong Fengtian. The local cultivators felt a surge of hope. His strength had grown exponentially, and many believed he was beginning to show signs of invincibility. If anyone could suppress Yuan and silence the immortal sect's arrogance, it was a monster from the Great Gan. The Great Gan? Yuan narrowed his eyes. If Nangong Mingyue were here, I might show some respect. But you? You are nothing. Endless immortal light erupted from his body, taking the shape of a massive, ancient mountain range. Suppress. Yuan merged his will with the immortal mountain and brought it crashing down. The dragon phantom shattered instantly. Under the weight of that unspeakable pressure, the heaven-painting halberd, a prized Dao weapon, snapped in half. Nangong Fengtian's expression twisted. He instinctively pushed his horned dragon body to its limit, his muscles bulging as he poured every ounce of his physical essence into a desperate strike. He balled his fists together like a hammer and met the descending mountain head-on. The mountain trembled, but Nangong Fengtian's body began to crack, blood spraying from the fractures in his skin. Too weak. Yuan shook his head and pressed the mountain down further. With a final explosion of gore, Nangong Fengtian was gone. How? How is this possible? Outside the platform, the geniuses trembled. This was Nangong Fengtian, and even he was not a match for Yuan. Worse yet, Yuan was supposedly the weakest of this group from the immortal sect. How could they possibly win? Despair began to take root in their hearts. Yuan stood tall on the platform, savoring the looks of hopelessness on their faces. He exchanged a knowing glance with Xiao Tianqiu and laughed. Jiang Xuan, you coward. Get out here. Do you truly have the heart to watch your fellow Xuantian geniuses die one by one? They had 3 goals in Xuantian: the Dao War, the World Tree Seedling, and the heads of Jiang Xuan and Nangong Mingyue. While killing these other geniuses provided small rewards, they were nothing compared to the prize of Jiang Xuan. Even though the Pavilion Master's rules prevented them from fighting outside the platform, they were confident. If they kept killing, Jiang Xuan would eventually be forced to show his face. Resentment began to brew among the local factions. Why hadn't Jiang Xuan responded? He had been called out by name. How could he endure such an insult? He had killed Qin Wuji of the Dao Integration Realm before. Surely he wasn't afraid of someone at the peak of the Tianyuan realm. Was he really still in seclusion? People were starting to doubt. Is Jiang Xuan actually afraid? Nangong Heguang asked, stunned. Elsewhere on a desolate mountain, the geniuses who had arrived from the Dao Gate were gathered. Because of their status as members of the 4 great families, Nangong Hechang and Nangong Heguang had easily taken command. They had ordered their group to stay hidden, waiting for the top-tier prodigies of the Dao Gate to arrive. This was the first battle of the Dao War, and they couldn't afford to be careless. Nangong Hechang shook his head, looking helpless. The ancestors told us to protect Jiang Xuan, but we can't protect him if he won't show up. We can't exactly start a war with the immortal sect before he even appears. Their primary mission was to defeat the immortal sect, but they didn't want to risk losing the first slot of the Dao War by acting prematurely without their strongest fighters. If they lost, the responsibility would be theirs to bear. We wait, Hechang said. In the eyes of the Xuantian people, we are outsiders from the Dao Saint Realm just like the immortal sect. If we go out there now, they won't trust us. But Nangong Fengtian was from the Great Gan, and he just died. Is it right for us to stay back? Huguang asked hesitantly. The ancestors told us to respect the ancestral bloodline, but they didn't say we had to protect every person in the Great Gan, Hachong replied dismissively. He wasn't Nangong Minghua. He doesn't matter. I see, all right. Huguang nodded, though a sense of unease lingered. Would the ancestors truly not blame them? Meanwhile, in the Earth Emperor's secret realm, was I too aggressive? The Pavilion Master asked with a bitter smile, looking toward the Earth Emperor. The Earth Emperor sighed. It is rare and commendable that you want to do something for Xuantian. The Pavilion Master fell silent. He understood the subtext. He had been too reckless. However, it might be a good thing, the Earth Emperor added, his eyes deepening. He smiled at the Pavilion Master. Since you have already started this, you must see it through to the end. The Pavilion Master blinked. What do you mean? The Dao War in the Dao Saint Realm is approaching, isn't it? And one of the spots is decided by a competition among the younger generation? The Earth Emperor said softly. The Pavilion Master's eyes brightened as he caught the drift. Can we manipulate that? The Earth Emperor stroked his beard. Anything is possible if you put in the effort. Just tell me what I need to do, the Pavilion Master urged. The Earth Emperor thought for a moment. You only need to. Before he could finish, his expression froze. He turned sharply toward the chaotic space where Jiang Xuan was in seclusion. What the hell? A voice thundered from the void. Old man. Where the hell is my wife? To be continued. Hope you liked today's video. Join the community by subscribing and dropping a like. I'll be back with another update tomorrow. See you then.